What do I ask for the audit? Can you hear anything? Does it sound like it's on?
And at this time, we will open the regularly scheduled meeting for Monday, April 10th of the Orion Township Zoning Board of Appeals. Please call the roll.
Dan Durham,
Here.
Don Walker,
Here.
Mike Flood,
Here.
Diane Danaskis here, Joanne Van Tassel.
Here.
Quorum is present.
Thank you. Next up are the minutes from the March 13th, 2023 meeting. Does any board member have any concerns, additions, deletions, or motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve the minutes as presented.
Support.
Motion by Mr. Walker, support by Mr. Flood. All in favor?
Actually, that's reversed.
We'll do it the other way. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Minutes are approved.
Tracy Stick.
We have the agenda review and approval for tonight's cases. Same questions. Do the board members have any concerns, or if not, a motion?
Move to accept the agenda as presented.
Support.
Thank you. I have a motion and a support. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we're ready with tonight's business. Before we get started, we have quite a bit larger gallery than normal, and that usually indicates popular cases. I don't have any idea who belongs to what, nor does it matter. What I do need to do is set some basic ground rules so that we all understand what we're going to do here. The most basic ground rule of all is respect. When you come up to speak, respect the board members, we will respect you. If you come up for public comment, speak to the board, not to other people that have come up, and not to the applicants, please. 3 minutes by this watch will be your time when you approach the podium and stop moving. At that time, your public comment period will begin. At the end of the 3-minute time, you will hear me say thank you for your input, and at that point, your time is up. Now, if we have multiple people that want to speak to the same case, if you're third and fourth in line and realize, listening to the person in front, that you really don't have anything new to represent or to put forward, try to cut us down if you can, because we're going to be here a long time. Not that that's not what we're here for, but I just want to, like I say, set some rules going in, and hopefully it'll be easier for everybody. Thank you. First case, AB 2023-02, David Lagerquist at 2377 Cedar Key Drive, Sidwell 09-21-127-012. Petitioner is seeking 2 variances from zoning ordinance 78, zoned R2, Article 6, Section 6.04. Number 1 is a 3.5-foot side yard setback variance from the required 10 feet for deck stairs to be 6.5 foot from the property line to the south, and a 1%, number 2 is a 1% lot coverage variance from the allowed 25% for total lot coverage of 26%. Do we have an applicant? Come on up, introduce yourself, and let us know what you'd like to do, please.
Sure. First of all, I'd just like to say all these people are here to support me tonight, so. I'm joking.
Good icebreaker.
So my name's David Lagerquist, and my family has lived at 2377 Cedar Key Drive for the past 20 years. Unfortunately, my wife couldn't be here tonight. She's in the process of taking my daughter back to the airport to get back to college. And my representative from Lars, David, Damon, is on vacation with his family, so you guys got me. Here I am. So basically, we're in the process of updating an old original backyard second-story deck. The original steps are old, and they're starting to separate from the deck and are in the early stages of becoming a hazard. The old original deck is oddly shaped with one long line of steep steps coming down from a deck at a 45-degree angle down to a brick patio. From speaking with our Lars David representative, we're also under the impression that the original present deck steps are potentially not in code due to their width and their steepness. The deck size would basically remain the same, yet the front would be squared to make it more functional and steps moved to the side to make it safer and more functional as well. Per Lynn Harrison's direction, we've added this deck into the home coverage lot size coverage calculation based upon the deck being off our first floor ranch home. I'd like to mention that the present or original home and deck comes in at 25.8% lot coverage, which is roughly 0.8% over the allowed 25%. So even without changing the deck, we have an original and existing 0.8% overage that requires a variance. By moving the stairs to the side, the overage increases to 25.9%, or it's a tenth of a percentage point increase over the original deck. So if we change the deck and you guys approve, it's going to be one tenth of a percentage point increase in lot coverage size. I'd also like to mention that the deck is elevated 10 feet above the ground due to the steep grade of the property behind our home. To square off the front of the deck and make it easier, safer, and more functional, we're proposing to move the staircase out to the side of the deck, which would infringe upon the 10-foot setback limit from the property line. As mentioned earlier, the staircase would infringe 3.5 feet or end 6.5 feet from the property line to the south. The staircase would descend from the second-story deck to an elevated landing, and then a second set of short steps from the landing would continue to descend at a 90-degree angle underneath the deck towards the back patio. The neighbors on either side of us agree with the deck plans and variants. Please see the letters in your packets. And the Homeowners Association Board has approved the plans as well. Please see the letters in your packets. So we're proposing the two variances because we feel it's not possible to put steps on the north side or front, which is the lake side of the deck again, due to the very limited space we have to work with in the original home design, original small deck placement, and steep grade of the property down to the lake. North side, if we were to attempt to place stairs on the house or north side of the deck, we feel that the steps would be less safe than the new design. What we're proposing is 2 levels of gradual stairs with a landing in between with a new design versus a present one steep long line of stairs down to a brick paver patio. If we place steps in on the house or north side, it would have to be 1 long line of steps. We feel the 2 levels of gradual stairs with a landing in between versus the existing line of steep steps down to a brick paver patio would be safer if there was a fall. Due to their length, stairs on this side of the deck would also block our safest access down the steep grade to the lake, which are large limestone steps. Also, 1 long line of steps on the side would take about 1/3 of our brick paver patio space, causing major disruption of its use. They would look unnatural in their positioning on the home from the lakeside and not be congruent with neighborhood home designs, which most have steps to the outside direction of the home with 2 levels of steps. In general, they just wouldn't fit properly in the space available. Front of deck, if we were to attempt to place steps on the front or lake side of the deck, again, due to the limited space we have available in steep grade of the property, the stairs once again would be 1 long line, not as safe as 2 levels, block the stone steps, which are the safest access down the steep grade to the lake, as well as they would come quite a ways out onto the patio and disrupt the functionality and look of the patio. The project is consistent with other homes on the lake. All properties in the area with a second-story deck have staircases coming down the deck to the ground. Most staircases come down from the outside of the deck and have 2 levels of stairs connected by a landing. We actually walked down the street and looked at all the different homes, and the design's pretty consistent with most everybody else on Cedar Key. The only way the modification is not consistent with other properties is based upon the second story, 3.5-foot infringement upon the property line setback due to the steps coming down from the deck before they turn to a 90-degree angle under the deck. Due to the reasons I've stated, we feel we can't place stairs on the house side of the deck or front again. So the practical difficulty we have is based upon the original design and construction of the approximately 40-year-old home, placement of the original small deck, and steep property grade that is present on the back side of the home down to the lake. Due to these reasons, the small, tight space we have to work with makes it very challenging, to say the least, to come up with a safe and functional design to replace and not expand the deck while staying in code and keeping safety in mind. We also have an existing 0.8% lot coverage variance from the original design and construction of the home. We had no control over this. This project would increase our lot coverage 1/10 of a percentage point. We're not trying to expand this deck. Sincerely, we're just trying to increase the safety and functionality with some new stairs. So we'd like to have steps from our new and improved deck to the lower ground level patio. We've tried to think honestly of every option possible and feel that a set of stairs on the property line side of the house is really the best option. The new deck design would be safer than the existing old stairs. The deck itself would be the same size as the old deck. We're only increasing the lot coverage by 1/10 of a percentage point. Be consistent with other homes on the lake in the existing neighborhood. Integrate well with the original design of the house and the existing property. Will enhance the look of the house while causing no disruption or change of view to the neighbors. The homeowners association agrees with the design and has approved the plans. And the new steps would not obstruct the view of the adjacent neighbors on either side of our home, and both approve of the plans. Thank you so much for your time. I truly do appreciate it. Are there any questions?
Board members?
Sorry, I know it was kind of lengthy.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Flood?
Sir, I think you did an excellent job on your presentation.
Thank you, sir.
I like how you did your practical difficulty. You explained it very well.
Thank you, sir.
That's the first thing I always look for. You know, I note in our packet that the fire marshal has no concerns with this application. And also want to note that there's 3 letters in our packet. And the 2 neighbors immediately adjacent to you, let me get their names here, let me get my, covered up my sheet here. On different pages here. One's on the north side, that'd be what, Rob and Natalie?
Mazzola. Yes, sir.
Yes, that's at 2385 Cedar Key. Then the other neighbor on the adjacent to you on the other side, 2375, the Gaskins.
Yes, sir.
They
Larry
both
Merrill.
have no problem with this. But you do have a neighbor that's across the lake over by on Browning, which is over by Eaton Gate off of Baldwin, and you're right over here off of.
Yeah, I'm on
It's on the
the,
lake.
I'm all the way over on the other side, sir.
It's Dave, let's see, what's the wrong one? I want to get it in the record, so we get it in the record. The reason they don't support it is that they don't like the idea of all these lakes in the county being overdeveloped. And I think what they got their apples and oranges mixed up is you're not putting a building up, expanding your home, you're just putting stairs,
Yes, sir.
placing dilapidated stairs on your existing deck.
Yes, sir. And actually, we're just increasing the footprint size of the whole thing. We're increasing the size by 1/10 of a percentage point of what it presently is.
I think that sometimes people don't understand exactly what you're doing, so I just want to get that in the record that those are in the packet. That's it.
Thank you. The name that goes with the resident that was not in favor is Barbara Schalk at 2590 Browning, and it's for the reasons that Mr. Flood stated. Mr. Tassel, Ms. Danaskis?
Mr. Chairman, I visited the property. You have a very steep incline, starting from the road and going down.
Yes, ma'am.
You're limited by the structures and that going down to the lake, it's also very steep. And I understand the need to try and be creative to adjust to your topography and, where the deck was placed originally by the original owners.
Yes,
And, yeah, the need to be safe when, constructing a staircase, where not only are people coming down the stairs, but they're also facing coming down an incline, so.
Do we have anyone in the audience that came specifically to speak to this matter?
Should I sit down?
See, give us one more second. Ms. Van Tassel, do you have anything? No? Okay. If we have no public comments, so we can entertain a motion if anybody is so moved.
Mr. Chairman, I will entertain a motion here.
Mr. Flood?
Anybody feel free to jump in too if I leave something out. In the matter of the ZBA case, AB 2023-02, David Lagerquist?
Yes, sir.
I'm glad I said that right. 2377 Cedar Key Drive, Sidwell number 0921-127-012. Date stamp received February 1st, 2023. I would move that the petitioner request for two variances for zoning ordinance 78, zoned R2, Article 6, Section 6.04. One, a 30.5-foot side yard setback variance from the required 10 feet for deck stairs to be 6.5 feet from the property line to the south. And number two, a 1% lot coverage variance above the allowed 25% for a total lot coverage of 26% be granted, or he did the date stamp. Because the petitioner did demonstrate that the following standards for variances have been met in this case, and they set forth facts which show that in this case, the petitioner does show the following practical difficulty. Due to the unique characteristics of his property in the back there, along the edge of the lake, and the condition of his original 40-year-old stairs that are deteriorating, and the petitioner is wanting to, which are very steep, and is wanting to redo those to put a 90-degree angle on it in order to put a landing, so he doesn't have a 45-degree straight down to his patio. The following are exceptional or extraordinary circumstances or conditions applicable to the property involved that do not generally apply to other properties in the same district or zone. Like I said before, this is a lake property, and he's curtailed on how far he can put these stairs on his patio, his porch, pardon me.
I would add, being familiar with that area, I think his lot is more steeply sloped than our properties to the north or to the south.
Okay, I'll amend that motion to reflect that.
Just
Thank you. The variance is necessary for the preservation and enjoyment of substantial property right possessed by other properties in the same zone or vicinity based on the following findings of fact. He has a second-story door wall, I imagine you're getting out of, and a lot of you folks in that area have those patios, those stairs and decks for that access out of that second level. The granting of the variance or modification will not be material detrimental to the public welfare or materially injurious to the property or to improvements in such zone or district in which the property is located based on the following findings.
I would say that it is consistent with what others in the neighborhood have done with their properties. And this is property that's been existing for 40 years or so.
And that motion reflect that. Further, based on the following findings of fact, the granting of this variance would not impair an adequate supply of light or air to adjacent properties. We have our both properties to the north and south of the applicant have no problem with this. Also, the HOA has approved this. Unmeasurably increase the congestion in public streets, increase the danger of fire and danger of public safety. In fact, it will help safely have a new steps the way you're going to design those, and the fire marshal has no concern with this. Unreasonably diminish or impair established property values within the surrounding area or in any other respect impair the public health, safety, comfort, morals, or welfare of the inhabitants of the township.
Support.
A motion on the floor by Mr. Flood, supported by Mrs. Danaskis. Do we have any further discussion by the board?
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Walker?
I'd like to perhaps have the motion maker add that normally we do not grant a variance to a property that already has a variance on it, but this variance was not created by the petitioner. This was by the builder when the home was built 28 years ago. So I think we could make an exception in this case.
Amend my motion that this is not self-created.
Thank you.
Very good. Do we have anything further from the board?
April? Did you,
I seconded, yep.
Oh, you have to amend your second.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Amend your second.
Oh, I second the motion as amended.
Nothing additional? Please call the roll.
Diane Daneskis, yes. Joanne Van Tassel,
Yes,
Don Walker,
Yes.
Mike Flood,
Yes.
Dan Durham.
Yes. You're all set? Your motion, your request is passed unanimously.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, everybody. I appreciate your time.
Work with the building department, make sure your permits are all where you need them to be, and off you go. We're getting good weather at the right time.
Thank you. Appreciate it, guys.
Good day, sir.
Have a nice night. Thank you.
All right. Where's my paperwork? Next up, we have AB 2023-04, Paul Smith at 4212 Mill Lake Road, Sidwell 09-18-426-005. Petitioner seeking one variance from zoning ordinance 78, zoned SF. Article 5, Section 5.02, C1. Number 1 is a 63-foot property line setback variance from the required 70 feet for an existing private stable to be 7 feet from the property line to the north. Apparently, you're here to speak to it, sir?
I am. Good evening. My name is John Little. I'm an attorney for Paul Smith. Paul Smith is the property owner at 4212 Mill Lake Road. Unfortunately, he couldn't be here this evening, so I'm here for him. This is his request, as the board indicated, for a 63-foot variance for a property line setback related to a private stable. This private stable, or this structure, existed when Mr. Smith purchased the property in 2021. It's on the northernmost portion of his property, adjacent to county land. I believe it's a park. I couldn't really tell if it were Orion Park or the name of the park, but it's a very large park or county property that's not improved. So there are no neighbors or homes adjacent to this private stable on the north side of the applicant's property. The structure had a cement foundation, so this wasn't something that he could move to accommodate the 70-foot side yard setback. Moreover, if he did move it further away from the side yard, it would actually be closer to the neighbors. And there was a complaint here. That was the impetus for the application for the variance. But to build a new private stable on the property or to try to relocate the one that exists would mean to move it closer to the neighbors. The neighbors are on the south side of the property. The stable is, again, as far north as it can be, further than the setback would normally allow. That's part of the unique characteristic of this property that's different from most of the properties that are also zoned suburban farm, is that the entire north boundary line of this property is adjacent to that vacant county land, unimproved county land. Without the variance, Mr. Smith and his wife and their 2 minor kids wouldn't be able to maintain horses on the property. They have 3 horses. They had 1 cow. The cow actually gave birth to a calf, and they had a number of chickens. That was also an issue because it's too many livestock animals. So they gave their chickens to another neighbor. They've removed actually all of the animals at the moment from the property, but their intent is, if they can have the private stable, to have the horses on the property. It's my recollection that you're allowed to have 3 livestock for his size property, which is just over 5 acres. I submit to you that it doesn't do harm to the public or to the neighbors, in as much as, again, the stable is as far north and as far away from the neighbors as it could be. To come and to build a stable 70 feet away would actually bring it closer to the neighbor's property. And on that basis, Mr. Smith is asking for the desired variance.
I don't know what your background is as far as zoning issues and things like this, but you were able to listen to the gentleman in front of you do a very detailed description of practical difficulty, which is part and parcel of any motion or any variance that is done by this board. We cannot give a variance, even if we would all like to, if there's not demonstrable practical difficulty. What would you believe that it would be in this particular case? He's got room to move it if he wanted to. If it moves it closer to the neighbors, I hate to say this, but that is not the purview of this board tonight. That might be an issue between, the property owners. But what would you believe the difficulty would be?
I submit to you that the practical difficulty is that it can't be moved because it has a cement foundation, and that it was existing in 2021. The structure was existing in 2021 when he purchased the property. So this wasn't something that, he built. It was something that was there on the property when he purchased it. And I would submit to you that is a practical difficulty. For example, on the last applicant where the developer built the house slightly over the amount of square footage that was allowed, but, and the applicant was asking for more. That wasn't something that he self-created. It was something that the practical difficulty was that it existed at the time that he purchased the property.
Thank you. Board members.
Just for the record to clarify things, the property to the north, and if I can read through all the tree branches here, it looks like it's 09 17 351 015.
Correct.
Is part of Oakland County Orion Oaks Park. When Chrysler was seeking the bailout in 1980, part of the thing was the state was to get all of that, or a good portion of that vacant land to be part of Bald Mountain. Oakland County Parks and Rec paid $500,000 to get the property be west of Joslin, south of Clarkston Road, going all the way over to Baldwin. And there was this one little piece that jutted out west of Baldwin. That's this piece here. For the record, it is part of Orion Oaks Park. However, it has never been developed. I doubt that it will ever be developed. It's just this little finger that's hanging out there. So there are no property owners around. There's little likelihood there's ever going to be property owners in the future. So that's just for the record, so you understand how that parcel there came to be and why it's vacant.
Appreciate that. I tried to investigate and I couldn't figure out how it came to be.
Well, I was township supervisor when this happened, so that's how come I've got a record of it.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. I will say one other thing. I don't know if any of you, the rest of you, travel down Mill Lake Road. I'm familiar with the road because I have walked it in the past campaigning. I'm familiar with the road because the property that developed into Mill Creek Village, I happened to introduce the person who developed that property or made it available for development to the property owner from Pontiac, where I used to live, who owned the property. And so I've walked a lot of that property, and I did drive back there and just didn't see that sign that said no trespassing and all that sort of stuff. And I knew that hadn't been shot in the past, didn't think I was going to be shot this time. But I did notice that those homes immediately to the south of this property within the Mill Creek Village seem to have an awful lot of stuff in the backyard. And I'm not sure if they met setbacks or not, but they certainly were very, very close. This fellow's here, I mean, the property owners are sitting out in an area that it's likely you're going to get anybody venturing that far down, because you go to the end of Mill Lake Road and then you got to go down this private drive, which, more private because it doesn't have a name on it. And I noticed the property to the west has a barn. I'm not sure it meets setbacks either, but, that's, a case for another day. I can't imagine anybody wanting to force somebody to move horses closer to where they live than where they are right now, but you never can tell. Thank you.
Sir, help me understand. I believe, and tell me if you have heard the same thing, I believe the problem here is that the previous owner did not use it as a stable?
I believe that's right.
And now that it's being used as a stable, it falls under regulations for stables, and that makes where it sits too close to the property line?
I think that's fair. I don't know what the prior owner used it as, but I believe that to be right.
Thank you. Excuse me?
If I may.
Please.
So that structure was put in somewhere between 2002 and 2005. Prior to that structure being in there, it was a pretty significant wetland area, if you look at the photos above it. It does look like in 2005, there was some sort of stable work there because there is a circle structure that is in there that looks like something that would corral animals. So I do believe that if you consider that area is considered a wetland according to the maps that I see. And it was abated somewhere between 2002 and 2005. And I checked all our records in our document retention, and I can't find anything for abatement of that or any permit on that building as well.
In your opinion, if I can ask, would the reasoning for moving it away from the property line, if it's going to be used as a stable, is because of the wetland immediately behind it?
Yeah, I think, when you have animals that poses threats to wetlands, typically you would have to go out and do a test of water and whatnot to make sure that fecal matter is not getting into the wetland area.
Thank you. While the board's thinking it over, do we have anybody in the audience that came specifically to speak to this matter? Come on up. Please introduce yourself and tell us what's on your mind.
Yeah, great. Good evening. Thank you. Good evening, board members. Happy Easter, and thank you for the history lesson. So, my name is Kyle Vanderhobel. I'm actually a property owner in Mill Creek Village, the southern homes to the adjacent property in question here with Paul Smith. We've been there since May 2019, and the previous owners were using the structure as for their equipment, we'll say for a lawn tractor. Since the Smiths have moved in, they have turned it into a stable and then put up the fence work going around the stable. So my concerns are just like David had mentioned before, just earlier, that this is a wetlands behind it. They are currently not taking care of the fecal matter. They have not trucked out the poop at all. So there's concern about it leaching into the wetlands. And then my other concern is, the animals are not there because they have vacated the property. So their kids told my children and myself that they have moved to Georgia. They moved out a week and a half ago. And then I met last weekend with a gentleman that came and got the horses and said that they were taking the horses down to Georgia. So at this point, I believe this is a fraudulent or an erroneous request trying to disguise this as a stable when it wasn't the intent of the structure previously that they moved into. And then also the health concerns that it poses.
You got a boatload of expensive hay sitting there.
It was all trucked in under Paul Smith. It wasn't there previously.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your time. And out of curiosity, are we able to defer to people our time?
I'd rather not until we see how it's going to go.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Hello, thank you, and good evening. I'm Kinsey Austin. I live at 3684 High Grove Way, adjacent to the homeowner. I've lived there since 2013, so for the last 10 years, I've been able to observe this property and have clear line of sight to the front yard, the home, and the outbuilding. The homeowner's request appears to me to be incorrect. Just what Kyle just said, for the prior 8 years, that structure, that outbuilding had been used as a garage. It had a garage door and it stored mechanical equipment, lawnmowers and other mechanical equipment. When the Smiths moved in, they chose to modify that building. They put in stalls, they put a fence around it, and changed its usage. So it's not exactly where the building is, it's how it's being used. In addition, that it's not detrimental to the public health or safety or welfare, well, actually it is. I've had 2 complaints filed with the township, one last year and one this year, about the manure and the number of horses. Both of those cases were closed. When I came to the township on the 30th, I read through that the verbal complaint that I had made only talked about the animals, not the manure. But that is part of my complaint. So on the 31st of this year, I've also filed a complaint in regards to the manure. Just last year, I talked with Paul Smith and asked him about the odor and the problem with all of the manure on the property, and that it wasn't following township ordinances to have a concrete pad for the manure, or that it gets removed every week. Paul informed me that they had never removed the manure and didn't have any plans to do so. So that was in October of last year. So at that point, that's over a year's worth of manure on the property. As we sit today, there's 18 months' worth of manure sitting on this property that have yet to be removed. I was very concerned about this, about the health issues for our children and for the environment with the runoff from this property. So I actually had water samples pulled from Orion Oaks Park and from my own property so we could get an assessment, is this really an issue or not? I had those sent to a lab, and the lab results came back that the runoff that's going into Orion Oaks is 20 times the fecal coliforms for water that's in the surrounding area. That's substantially increased for what is going on in this area, and creates a tremendous risk for health and welfare impacting the area. Also, in addition, it attracts flies. This is an Ordinance 160 violation where it attracts flies, insects, rodents, and vermin to the property. I've lived next to this property for 10 years, and I've observed this property because I work from home primarily, and my wife is home all the time. And this property is regularly flooded from the west end all the way to this outbuilding. It is very, very wet back there. So to Mr. Goodlow's point, this is a wetlands not only in Orion Oaks, but I believe that wetlands extends onto this property. So I don't see anywhere on this property where you could build a stable where you're not going to get runoff from this property that's going to impact not only Mill Creek Village homeowners, but also the Orion Oaks Park, which, while it's not developed, it is still a park and it is still important wetlands for our community. I grew up in rural Indiana. I've got family and friends that are farmers. They raise livestock. I'm greatly appreciative of them and the families who want to raise animals. But I appreciate that those activities need to be done in a manner that's not detrimental to public health and safety. So with that, I'm respectfully requesting that this board not approve the zoning variance or any building of a stable on this property, and will address the existing complaint that we have in regards to the manure. Thank you.
Let me ask you one question before you walk away. Understand, please, that whether they put a stable in a place on that property that is allowed by ordinance now is not the purview of this board. We're here to look at tonight's request for a change in the rules to allow it to stay where it is. So what they do from the time we all walk out the doors on forward is not directly tied to this board. You would have to work through the main offices of the township.
Yeah.
If you had a concern. And the samples you said you had taken, what month of the year, please?
Those were just taken last week.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, so those were taken last week, sent to a lab and analyzed. The level of the runoff that's going into Orion Oaks right now was at 600 CFUs per milliliter, per 100 milliliters. Background samples that were taken near the property but not directly adjacent to it were at 25. So that's, it's 20 times higher, that runoff that's going into Orion Oaks Park. So
When did the horses leave?
The horses left here within this last week. So even though the horses are gone, again, there's 18 months of manure on the property, and that runoff will continue. And now that it's getting warmer, now we have insects, bugs. This is just a continuing problem. So while there aren't homes over on Orion Oaks Park, I totally understand that, but this is running off into a park, and water just continues to move from there. So it's going to run off and impact our environment and impact our wildlife. So, and that's where it sits today. So, yes, I still would say I would want this request denied because this is entirely too close to Orion Oaks Park, and that runoff is going to continue into those park and into those wetlands. And I understand, Mr. Durham, at a later date, if they built something, at that point, I would ask that same question. Given that this is a wetlands, next to a wetlands, or potentially in a wetlands, is that really appropriate to build a staple or have livestock on this property, especially if it's not going to be maintained?
Thank you. Do we have
Thank you very
anybody
much.
else for this topic? Come on up.
Hello, I'm Jessica Austin. Kinsey is my husband. We're in the Mill Creek Village subdivision. I'm in 3684 High Grove Way, and I'm here to speak in regards to the application. Specifically, I'll start with, there were 2 reference properties that were listed in the variance proposal. Neither of those 2 properties apply to this property. Those 2 properties that were listed in the variance, both of them are the buildings that had the variance approved are being used either as a garage or as a pole barn. Also, the environmental, I guess the surrounding area is much, much different than the petitioners. The 2 reference properties had no standing water in the area, and they also didn't have any livestock. So the 2 reference properties are not applicable to this property. I include some pictures of where the garage was converted into the stable, where the livestock fence was added without a permit, by the way, and it also is encroaching into that 70-foot buffer zone for the setback. Down at the bottom, I did put a picture where I pulled up the 1997 aerial topography and the photograph of this area. And even back in 1997, this used to be like a cattle area farm, but that was away from this property. So this property never was used for that purpose. So sometimes I'm hearing people talk like, oh, well, this is where the ranch was, this is where the cow was. No. If you look at the aerial photograph, that is away from this property. This property didn't get developed in that way until the whole Mill Creek Village subdivision was put in. If you look at the picture down at the bottom, what you see.
Can you
I'm sorry.
have somebody assist you and hold them up because
Yeah, the picture.
maybe the other kids can see it, but I can't.
The picture on the
No.
bottom of the board, nope, the first one. If you look at that, there
Maybe if you
is-
just post it on the countertop there and hold them up.
And
Muy
point to it.
bueno.
All right, so if you take a look at the one photograph here, this is the stable as it is next to Orion Oaks. You can see the manure pouring out of the stable, and it is entering into the Orion Oaks Park. It is a wetlands. In this area, when you look at the Oakland County NWI wetland area, this property is wetlands. And you asked when the horses were removed. They were removed a week ago. However, this is a quick test for the fecal coliform. So even though the animals have been removed, orange and purple indicate severe fecal coliform in the water. So we've now had 2 tests of the wetlands area, and they are contaminated by fecal coliforms. It's the Smiths in their petition reference farming. I grew up in farmland. I grew up rural. This is not farming. For farming, there are generally accepted practices. The Smiths are not following any of the general accepted practices for farming. They're not removing the manure, and the 70-foot setback is to provide a filter system, a natural filtering system of the manure before it goes into runoff or wetlands. So if we allow this variance of the private stable next to the wetlands, we've eliminated that natural environmental filter to treat this manure runoff. So the setback is specified in our zoning, I believe, off of the best practices for farming. You need to have a buffer between your manure and any water. So why do we care? Like my husband said, contamination to our property, the smell, mosquitoes. Orion Oaks wetlands does have a species of concern. It's being evaluated by the federal government to be added to the endangered species list. So even though we say, oh, this is just that little west part of Orion Oaks, it is a very, very important environment to our community, and it has these species of concern in them. And the species may be added to the endangered list this year. I have some pictures of where the frogs are, and you can see that it is just contaminated area. So in addition, we believe that this property, not only that the variance shouldn't be granted, but this property needs to be rectified. It's a contaminated property. We have two proofs of the contamination. You can walk this property because it's Orion Oaks, and that's where I took my pictures, is because I just put my boots on and you walk around Orion Oaks and you take the pictures. The runoff is disgusting. There is orange algae and green algae, and we haven't even hit the warm months. And the smell is awful. And so I know that sometimes it's hard to get people to work on this. I would request that after this property is rectified, this could be a project for a environmental science group at the high school, and especially if we have the protected species in this area.
Okay, we're coming to the end of your time to spend with us, but I have a statement more than a question. We have two sharply different problems. You've got me convinced that there is runoff issues and there's probably something that should be looked at it, but this board can't do it. The only thing that this board is here to discuss is whether or not it should be allowed to be used as a stable of the building that close to the property line. That is where our beginning, middle, and end is. So if you have some very real concerns that are real to you and they sound like they could be something tied to the previous occupant, but they're gonna have to go someplace else. Now, I don't know exactly where, but not here. So I don't want you thinking whether this is successful or not when you leave, okay, they know now they're gonna fix it, because it is not within the purview of this board to do that.
Oh, no, I understand that. It's just, no, I completely understand that. It's just the matter of that 70-foot setback. There's a function to that setback in farming. And in farming, that's to provide that filtration system of the manure before it reaches water. And if we eliminate that and allow this a variance, we're just continuing to allow this type of contamination.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Excuse me?
If I may.
Please, I'm sorry. It's too low.
I did some further research, and it did have a violation for it. I don't know why it didn't get followed up in 2006. If you came to me and asked me if I'd put a permit on this job, I would not, because I would consider it in the wetland by everything that I show. That is built inside a wetland. And now I know we don't allow things to be built, but number one, I'd like it to be permitted, because if it's built in a wetland, which I suspect it is, I consider the footings could be compromised, and therefore it wouldn't be a very safe structure. Number two, we have a foot setback for wetlands. Now, you can go on Property Gateway and look. And that's pretty much what we use. And if you look at the wetland inventory, I have serious concerns that this is plopped right into the middle of a wetland. Now, looking at it prior to the building in 2000, and when the building went in, that's when they cleared this wetland. And it looks like, obviously it was off the road, it wasn't really, maybe not taken seriously in 2000 or something, but prior to this house going up, that was all wetland, all the way half of that property was wetland all the way up to that point. And at some point, they abated that wetland. Now, I don't know if that has been done at the state, or I don't see anything in our records on the local level, and I was continuing to look, and I still couldn't find anything, but I have some concerns with it being plopped in the middle.
When you say abated, do you mean made to go away so it doesn't show as a wetland now?
Yeah, sometimes you can go file at the state to get a delineation of a wetland. Now, that's a question maybe the applicant would have.
Thank you. Come on up, sir.
Good evening. My name is Dan Cieslak. I live in Mill Creek Village. If you look at your file on this case, there is a photograph with a red line. Do you guys have that in the satellite view?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So I live in that first court inside Mill Creek Village. That is kind of closest to the southeast corner of the property. The Mill Creek Village Association President, Ron Haig, is here, and so is John Callahan. We all bought property that backs up to that little finger that extends to the west side, right? So we walk that property just like we walk across Baldwin Road and go to the rest of Maureen Oaks. I'm not going to use the pun that I could here, but I'm not going to go over what everybody already said, okay?
Thank you.
Mr. Goodlow's concerns, when he looks at this property, make me feel a little bit better. I know that you can only do so much here, and we're just talking about the variance. The variance should be denied because they failed to hit their burden of proof on it, period. I mean, and when you look at the motion, when you look at the applicant's presentation, they haven't hit what they've needed to hit in terms of having a substantial burden. They have a burden they have to hit, and they haven't hit it. But also, since I'm here, I'm going to say that the red writing on that satellite picture is hilarious when you talk about access to that property, because what access to that property is actually used by anyone with a trailer is straight through our neighborhood because it's paved. And Ms. Tassel, I'm happy you're happy with going back there and walking through those no trespassing signs that are there illegally, but we're not sure if we're going to get shot or not sometimes. We stay out of there. We know darn well that's public road. They shouldn't have those signs there, but we stay out of there. My family does anyway. But what we do use is the property right behind our lot that we bought on purpose because it backs up to public land that's very unlikely to be improved upon. That's how it was 11 acres on the west side of Baldwin Road. So you do have the power to deny the variance and start the process of rectifying this property by making sure that it doesn't present any further problem than it already has. Thank you.
Thank you. Have anyone else for this particular case? Okay, we'll ask the spokesman to come back up, please. And just remind us of your name.
John Little for Paul Smith.
Thank you, sir. Board members, Ms. Flood.
Mr. Chairman. I got a whole list here.
Okay.
I look at all these variances. We're deviating from our township ordinance. And I'll read you verbatim what's in our ordinance on this, pertaining this subject matter. Private stables shall not be closer to any property line than 70 feet. It says any property line. We're not talking about commercial, we're talking residential or whatever. Provided further that the tethering and pasturing of animals shall be confined and fenced entirely in the rear yard and shall in no instance be closer than 70 feet to any dwelling unit. Then it goes on and talks about the manure and stuff like that. I'm strictly focused on the 63 feet variance. Because when we do a variance, it stays with the land. It doesn't stay with the owner. Once that variance is granted, that variance is there forever. talking about that county park, and I'm glad Ms. Van Tassel explained that. This building we're sitting here right now was vacant state land. We did a land swap. We purchased some property in Oakland Township on the Paint Creek Trail. The state does not sell land because this is all tied up with the federal government too, with that,
Interior Department,
That-
Land and
yes.
Water Grant.
yeah. But will this stay state land forever? It could possibly be something else. If you know right now at the southwest, let's see, what is that? The southwest corner of Scripps and 24, that was state land too. And that land got swapped out. Now it's a Pulte subdivision.
The second attempt. The first attempt, they tried to put a state prison there and didn't.
Exactly.
Yes.
So what I'm trying to say is, regardless of what the property is, it's property. And once you do a variance, it's going to stay with that property. Just like the gentleman was here for the stairs. He's got approval for that variance will stay with that. I'm looking at the practical difficulty. Financial burden is not a practical difficulty. Plain fact. I look at this property, when I'm looking at the overhead, it's 300 feet wide on the east side. So 70 feet, there's plenty of room there for 70 feet. I'm not getting into the wetlands, all that other stuff. But my main concern is and you're asking for almost 10 times the variance of granting a variance. A lot of times we say to people, can you kind of, a little wiggle room here, but you're asking for 90% variance of the 70 feet. And I hate to set a precedence. I know they say we don't set precedents, but that's why they have attorneys in courts to take care of that kind of thing. But that's my 2 cents.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair?
Mr. Walker.
I totally agree with what Chairman, what Commissioner Flood said. But I want this board to consider that effluent runoff too. I know that's not exactly what we're here for today, but I don't think we should ignore that. I mean, we've only got one side's technical, scientific approval, including all the neighbors. But I think that should help shape our decision. That's just my opinion.
Agreed. Thank you. We put Mr. Goodloe firmly on the spot. Do you have the path to move that forward from your position?
What's that?
Have somebody other than us try to determine whether this is something that needs to be moved on?
Yeah, I can contact Eagle. Like I said, I do believe that it was wetlands at one point and changed. So, just because they modified it doesn't mean it doesn't still drain. Everything drains right into there from that property, I'm assuming.
It had standing water on over half of it when I was out there the other day. Now, we've had rain for 3 weeks, but we had standing water right there, and it was pointed directly at that structure.
Was it?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty, so, yeah, I mean, it's, from what I show, it's wetlands all the way up almost a third of that property, so, on that side. But yeah, that's something that maybe we'll tackle down the road.
Thank you. Board members, Ms. Danaskis.
I'm just going to reiterate that the primary reason for granting a variance is a demonstrated practical difficulty that is related to the property itself, not to the desire of what you want to use that structure for. So a change in use of the structure doesn't change the fact that the variance can't be changed just to meet the needs of what you want to change your use for. It's designed, that property's been used for equipment. It It's not 70 feet from the property line, and if you want to use it as a stable, it needs to follow the ordinances.
Thank you. Anything further from the board? If not, we can entertain a motion.
Can we get clarification from comments that were made by neighbors that the people don't live there, that they have moved some or all of the livestock somewhere else? Do the Smiths really plan on living there? What's that situation?
I think the intent to live there is predicated on what they can use the property for. So there was a complaint, obviously, and they understood that they weren't going to be allowed to keep the livestock that they have. So they did buy another property, and they have moved those animals to another property. But they haven't listed this property for sale, and their hope was to be able to maintain this as a private stable.
Thank you.
It's like we've got a couple folks thinking about it. There is light at the end of the tunnel here.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Walker.
What you thinking, didn't I? I was ready. Hold on. In the case of ZBA case number AB 202304, Paul Smith, 4212 Mill Lake Road, 09/18/426/005, I would move that the petitioner's request for one variance from zoning ordinance number 78, zone SF Article 5, Section 5.02C1, 1, a 63-foot property line setback variance from the required 70 feet for an existing private stable to be 7 feet from the property line to the north, be denied for plans dated March 8th, 2023, because the petitioner did not demonstrate that the following standards for variances have been met in this case, as they set forth facts that show in this case that the petitioner does not show practical difficulty, that is due to the uniqueness of this particular property and not related to the general conditions in the area. In addition, the granting of this variance or modification will be materially detrimental to the public welfare or materially injurious to the property, to the improvements in such zone or district in which the property is located, based upon the fact that by moving this, or granting this variance, allowing it to be moved, this matter has apparently been placed right in the middle of wetlands. And even though that the review of the public records under there may have been an abatement for these wetlands, we're not sure of that. From the testimony from the neighbors who are not scientists, I don't believe, I didn't hear that for sure, but they live there, and they've had some testing done that seemed quite scary to me sitting up here. One of our concerns sitting on this commission is the welfare of the citizens of Orion Township. And I sort of had thoughts on both ways until I heard that testimony about that. So I think in all of these respects, it's possible that this would impair the public safety, comfort, and morals or welfare of the inhabitants of the township. Therefore, I'd ask that the petitioner's request be denied.
Support.
Any additional discussion by the board? We have a motion by Mr. Walker, support by Mr. Flood. Hearing nothing from the board members as far as additional, please call the roll.
Joanne Van Tassel.
Yes for denial.
Dan Don Walker. Don Walker?
Yes, yes, did you say yes for denial? Okay, yes, I vote yes. Wasn't sure what that meant.
Mike Flood.
Yes.
Diane Danaskas, yes. Dan Durham.
Yes. Motion passes. Your request has been denied unanimously.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Next up, we have case AB 2023-05, Southfield Sign and Lighting for Joyology at 4898 Bald Mountain Road, Sidwell, 09-35-447-003. Petitioner is seeking one variance from sign ordinance 153, section 7, permitted ground and wall signs zoned IP. The variance request is for one additional, for one sign above the allowed one wall sign, for a total of 2 wall signs totaling 133.34 square feet. And I believe this tells me east elevation is where they want to put the new sign.
Yes.
Introduce yourself, please, and
Hi, I'm Mose Tuna with Southfield Signs. Chris Yatuma, the owner, has missed his flight, so he hasn't been able to get back yet. So I tried contacting him, and he didn't answer. But the property, the way it sits, it's they were only allowed one sign, and the way where their entrance is, off of Bold Mountain, there is no, the difficulty is customers can't really see the place till, customers that are going down Dutton, going north, can't see it. Customers driving down Bald Mountain, east or west, can't see it, no identification on the property. So we're asking to put one more sign facing Dutton to help customers see the property.
is your sign going to replace the banner sign that's up there now?
Yes.
Because when I went by there, it said they've already got 2 signs. I wonder why they need another one.
No, they don't, permanently, we only have one sign
You
on the
only have
property.
one permanent, but you in effect have 2 signs if you count the banner.
I honestly didn't even know the banner was up. That was not, I'm part of with Southfield Signs, and we put up the permanent sign. So if they put up a banner, honestly, I have no idea about it.
Thank you. Mr. Dance.
For the record, sir, your directions remind me of my niece who was directionally challenged. Dutton Road runs east and west. Bald Mountain runs north and south.
Okay. Oh, that's not what they put on the paperwork. I'm sorry, I didn't know that.
Well, that was the thing that struck me because I use that road on a regular basis.
Okay.
And they recently had a grand opening at that location. I wonder where in the world is, Joyopoly or, and you got a big sign that if you drive east on Dutton, coming from 24,
Okay.
going towards Squirrel Road or Adams Road, you can't miss the sign.
Okay.
It sticks out at you. You're asking now for a second sign, and I'm going to assume that it faces Dutton Road to the south, not the east.
If that's the south area, then yes, it's on the page where it's labeled number 2. So,
Okay,
looking at the aerial view,
looking at the aerial view, yes, that Bald Mountain Road there
yes.
is running north and south.
Okay. Sorry, I didn't know that.
Dutton Road is running east and west, has forever and a day, even when the cows used it. I mean, that used to be farmland at one time, take my word for it. And you got Ajax just across the street on the east side of Bald Mountain Road.
Yes.
And I'll just leave it at that for right now.
Mr. So let me be perfectly clear here. The second sign will be where it says number 2 on our overhead.
Yes.
And that'd be facing,
Dutton Road.
that's the south side of the building towards Dutton Road. Because I got looking at what our public notice was. It doesn't say where the sign's going. All it says, you're asking for one additional sign. Oh, it does say east elevation.
And the east
It
elevation
does
would
say
face,
east elevation in my, yes.
I know that's
So
what
that
it
would-
says, but
So
that would,
technically-
it would face Bald Mountain
it.
Road.
I do it. Mr. Goodloe,
Yes.
we're not gonna have this thing republished again because they got the wrong, south and east. They're asking for a variance for one additional wall sign.
It depends what you put in the motion.
Okay, so I said, that would not be a technicality that we would have to.
No, not the way the motion
Right.
would read.
That's the way I look at it too, but I want
Yeah,
clarification on that.
I think you're good, Mike.
So you want to change that to the south elevation, correct?
If they want it to face
That'd be south.
Dutton Road, that would be the south side. That's where their temporary big banner is.
I
They got one on the other side too, though.
I believe they want this on the west side, though.
The west side has a sign.
West side already has a sign.
Well, the west side is facing Culver's. They considered
Yep.
that the north side, it would be the west side now.
Yes.
That's how I just rewrote it on my drawing.
You got two banners up there now. You got one on the south side and you got one on the east side.
No, we got one on the west side, facing Culvers, facing 24.
That's the original sign. That's the electric sign.
The banner on the Culver side is down. They have a permanent sign on the Culver side.
Yeah. It's on number 2 here, and then the other side, towards Ball Mountain, you have a little banner up there too. Did you see that up there, Joanne? That banner?
Yep,
All the
I was
banners,
by there today.
Yeah.
I had to take my time going through there because the road commission has got it all blocked off because Edison,
Yeah.
believe it or not, are gonna bury electrical power lines in Bald Mountain between Dutton
Yeah.
and Silver Bell.
So a condition of the motion, if it was, someone wanted to approve one, would be that those banners would have to be removed.
Let me ask you, are you sure, as you stand there right now, are you sure where they want that?
yes. I'm
Tell me.
100%, I'm 100% positive. The first sign is put on the west side since she clarified the directions.
Yes,
So the first sign has been put up on the west side.
it has.
Yes, on,
Labeled number 1 on the aerial.
yes, labeled number 1 on the aerial on the west side now. There is one sign there.
There is, and I'd like to hear from you a direction where you want the other sign to go.
The second sign will go on location 2, which I have listed on my page as the south side.
Okay? As long as we all understand one another.
Correct.
Because if we can craft a motion any way we want, but if you don't think that's what you asked for, there's still going to be problems outside the door.
Correct. No, I'm 110% with the client. That's where it's going.
I'm all for moving forward if possible. I don't suspect, but did we have any public that came to speak to this sign matter tonight? Seeing none, we'll continue.
I'd like to ask a couple of questions if I might.
Please.
There are other commercial buildings in that area, some south of Dutton Road in Auburn Hills, others north of Dutton in Orion Township. I had asked the planning people to get in touch with you or the owner and ask them to check and see, are there other buildings in that area that have two exterior signs on their building? I didn't receive any information back. Did any other members here receive information?
I received that email and I talked to, I think her name is Lynn, and I told her, I said, we communicated with the two businesses next door and they're not retail, so they really didn't need or didn't see any second sign.
Doesn't matter whether they're retail.
They didn't
or
care
not.
for the exposure, the way this business needs the exposure.
Okay, well, I think it's up to the, I'd have to take a minute to go through this again, but generally they ask, is there something else in the area that would support your request here? Because, well, look at this guy and this guy and this guy all have signs on two sides of their buildings. it's up to you, the petitioner, to provide the information, not up for members of the board here to go scout it out.
I understand. I'm sorry. I don't have that information.
That building sits on a quarter lot, doesn't it?
Yes.
Corner of Ball Mountain and Dutton.
Yeah,
Dutton Road's what, 50 miles an hour?
pretty much, 45, 50.
I'd say 60.
Excuse me, drive down it today and you'll find it's about 10 miles an hour because they've got cones out all the way
They do.
from Culver's entrance going east back to about halfway down the hill on Dutton Road, east of Bald Mountain. And they've got Bald Mountain blocked off. And I mean, is there just
It's
a narrow
crazy over
little,
there right now.
little area like this that you can go through? I was there today, so I know of where I speak, so.
DTE's doing all that.
Yep.
groundwork, yeah.
Do you know off the top of your head, and you may not, those lights, they've decorated the building that you can see from the glide slope going into Metro Airport? Do they plan to keep those forever?
I honestly don't know, but we removed one section from the sign that we put on the west side. We had to remove one section. And I told the owner, I said, those are Christmas lights. They need to come down.
They are Christmas lights, that's why I was curious.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Please.
Being that they did advertise for the east, I was incorrect earlier by stating we would have to re-advertise. Now, the applicant may not have to come back, but I just got to suggest that we should re-advertise so we can make sure it's correct. That way, no one has issues with it.
So what does that do for our, tonight? Do we have to table now, or?
Yeah. How long does it take for an advertised?
You said table, you're saying postpone.
Postpone. Yeah.
Postpone.
Are they gonna have to?
Or, for a date certain, it just would be changed over, right? So, have to re-advertise.
It would have to be set over to the May 4th meeting.
Would that be enough time for the advertisement and all that?
Yes.
1 month for a re-advertise, if you could. And I know, I believe May 4th.
All I know is last week's Lake Orion Review had advertisements in it for variances for the 24th of April.
So it appears that the ball was dropped. I don't know on whose hands let it slip, but it slipped.
That's fine.
So we're gonna have to consider moving you back to a date certain, and a date certain is only one where we're sure we have a hole in the schedule.
May 22nd would be over a month.
Well, right now, you have nothing for the May 8th meeting, from what I've been told.
No cases, they consider canceling that, so I think the May 22nd meeting would probably be the best. That would give a month and 40 days.
Now, if he has a big banner sign up there now, between now and when he comes back, there won't be any movement to get him to take that down from your end?
No, I don't see, I don't see a reason to punish a new business that's in our town. We want them to succeed as well. They do have a temporary sign, so we're okay with that. I know it's not, but they're, it's a new business. We try not to get too crazy. Now, we don't want it up for an extended period of time before we start enforcement, but we try to look at that and,
So you heard the boss say that there won't be any movement between now and when you come back.
Okay.
Now, when you come back, if you're successful, you won't need to worry about it. If you're not, you'll have to handle it at that time.
Do I need to resubmit documents?
This is where it passes above my knowledge grade.
Well, what I would suggest is, you contact Lynn Harrison tomorrow
Okay.
or the next day. And, if they are re-advertising, you wouldn't have to technically, date certain means it's the same. This is re-advertising. So what I would suggest is let Lynn handle the scheduling.
Good.
That way you don't have to worry. So, that's what I would handle.
We have to have a motion to get it off the docket today.
Right.
I have,
Chair?
just one thing though, mentioning Lynn is the one who gave me the directions, just to let you know.
Yeah, no, but I did see, I read the application, it did say east elevation on the
Yeah.
application. It had it right on the drawing.
Yeah.
But on the, application it was,
And that's part of your public notice, so that's,
yeah, and you know
well,
that,
it's a technicality.
right, it is a technicality, so.
Mr.
Make a
Naskis?
motion. In the matter of ZBA case AB 2023-05, Southfield Sign and Lighting for Joyology, 4898 Bald Mountain Road, Sidwell number 0935477003. I would move that the petitioner's request for one variance from sign ordinance number 153, section 7, permitted ground and wall signs, zoned IP, a variance for wall sign above the allowed one wall sign for a total of two wall signs totaling 133.34 square feet east elevation, be postponed for the planned date stamped March 9th, 2023, because of an error in the directionality of the proposed sign. Two, and that that this matter be taken up at the May 22nd, 2023 ZBA meeting.
Support?
A motion by Mrs. Danaskis and supported by Mrs. Van Tassel. Additional by the board. We will be making a motion to postpone. Now, you'll be speaking with Lynn probably the next day or so,
Yes.
and she will be handling the scheduling of this. We are tentatively going to look at pushing it to May 22nd. If she has some other input in between, she's the one that sends our information to us.
Okay.
So that's the way that it'll work, but we
That's
do
fine.
have a motion on the floor, and can you please call the roll?
Joanne Van Tassel,
Yes.
Mike Flood,
Yes.
Diane Danaskis, yes. Don Walker,
Yes.
Dan Durham.
Yes, you are postponed.
Okay.
No fault of yours or ours, it just happened.
Oh, yeah, no worries. I'll
Thank-
talk to Lynn. Thank you.
Thank
You
you.
guys have a good evening.
You too. Okay, next case is, and I apologize in advance, I'm going to go out with Violetta Belan at 2209 Indianwood Road, Sidwell, 09-04-300-002. Petitioner seeking two variances from zoning ordinance 78, zoned SF, Article 27, Section 27.02A8. Number one is a 2,185.16 square foot variance above the allowed maximum floor area of detached accessory buildings of 1,000 square feet for existing sheds of 916.91 square feet and existing 448 square foot gazebo, an existing 1,057 square foot barn, and an existing 763.25 square foot carport. And number two is a 1,685.16 square foot variance above the allowed total maximum floor area of all accessory buildings of 1,500 square feet for existing sheds totaling 916.91 square feet, and existing sheds, 916, an existing 448 square foot gazebo, an existing 1,057 square foot barn, and an existing 763.25 square foot carport. Do we have a petitioner? Come on up to the podium there, please. Introduce yourself.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Violetta Bilan. I'm the owner with my husband of the property.
Okay, how did you get here? And just start, I guess, explaining to the best of your ability why we are looking at what we're looking at.
Okay. So first, I want to thank you for taking time to review my petition for variance for total square footage of accessory structures. So the reason why I'm here, I'm requesting the variance because I recently discovered that the combined area of accessory buildings on our property surpasses the maximum allowable square footage of 1,000 or 1,500. Until this revelation, I believe we could add more structure as long as their total area did not exceed 20% of our parcel square footage. And 20% of 70,145 square feet, it's up to 14,000 square feet. So in my mind, I thought we probably could put another 9,000 square feet of accessory storage, but apparently my interpretation of the ordinance could use a little constructive refinement. So how do we get, into the situation where, we exceed this maximum allowable square footage? So in 1999, we purchased the property, which included approximately 2,360 square feet of existing accessory building. So at the time, we were already, not within the ordinance, not knowingly. We had no idea. And then over the years, we have made various improvements resulting in an additional 825 square feet. Today, these buildings total approximately 3,185 square feet, which is over the limit specified in section 2702, I learned recently. So first, I would like to bring to your consideration the drainage and flooding issues which we have been experiencing due to topographical challenges. The natural elevation of our property has always been lower than Indian Wood Road and Newman Road. However, since we moved in, the suburban farm south and east of us were developed into dense planned unit development. They raised the ground elevation by several feet and altered our natural drainage pattern and caused excessive runoff water from the new subdivision. Now, as a result of the new development, our property is lower than north, which is the Indian Wood, the west side, which is Newman, but also now south and the east side of our property. In other words, we feel, we are in a valley. Sometimes my husband, when he gets pretty upset, he says, well, what are they trying to do? Put a detention pond? Try to make a detention pond out of our property. But, all this development, on top of the fact that we naturally are already lower than the adjacent roads, so our property has experienced ongoing drainage and flooding problems since 2000. And I have some pictures. I'm not sure if you received the recent email. I think it's the second page of the picture shows when the subdivision started to clear, how soon, as soon as they started to clear the adjacent land from the trees, we started to experience flooding. So that's what I'd like to bring to your attention, the situation that we're dealing with. Now I'd like to discuss, how we use each of the structure and, what has happened, during the 24 years that we've been living there. So barn, we believe, was constructed around 1920, and we initially were using it for storage. However, due to increased dampness from rainwater drainage, all the issues that we have been, experiencing over the years, which have been caused by neighbors' properties, the barn is not usable pretty much anymore for storage purposes. And the reason for it is because it holds the moisture. I mean, right now, because we are lower, I mean, we can't store anything. Right now, as soon as we put anything, everything stores, everything it rusts, very quickly. So we're not using it. We can't really use it. We're not using it. It's not usable. So we have been keeping it mainly to preserve its historical value and the aesthetic appeal of what is left of the suburban farm, I'm in the corner where, the suburban farm is still maintained somewhat as a suburban farm. Now we have a shed A. That one was existing property, a building at the time when we purchased, and we also estimate to be over 100 years old. That shed A is leaning and was always leaning. It had missing interior floors. Again, we kept it primarily due to its historical significance. My husband wanted to remove it many times, and I told him, no, keep it. I like it. We painted, and so it's still there. Now I'd like to talk about a garage. I don't know if so when we moved in, there was a 3-car garage. I don't know if I have to show you the pictures, or can you see the pictures? Like I provided pictures of aerial photograph, believe it's 2000, and then also picture that was taken at the time when we purchased the house. So there was a 3-car garage, which was attached to barn. But soon after we moved in, there was this historical snowstorm and the garage collapsed. At that time, we did not have funds. I mean, we were unable to, to build it, to rebuild it. At the time, we were more concentrated on, making additional, like cleaning the property, because there was a lot of junk left by the previous owners. We believe that the property was used as a storage by the Indianwood Golf Course. So that 3-car garage is not there anymore. Then we have a log cabin. This is a small, non-livable cabin. Doesn't have a plumbing. We acquired it in 2010 from Amish builders. It serves us as a guest house for visiting family and friends. Then we have a gazebo. So the log cabin we built that. During the same time, we put up gazebo, again, with the help from, the Amish builders. And that gazebo provides us with the shaded seating area, and it also matches the log cabin. So both log cabin and the gazebo, they match. Then shed C, it's a small temporary storage building which we installed in 2015 for our son's personal items. He moved out, but he wanted us to keep his memorabilia. It was only temporary. Actually, as of now, we took it down last week, so it's not there. So the variance will have to be like 98 square feet less, so it's gone. And then we also, we have a third structure which we've added, which is a carport. It's a two-vehicle carport with a storage area. Again, it was built by Amish with the logs only, and we use it to park vehicles and store yard and snowplow equipment. So that's the general description and history of the property. Hope you can see, you have an idea. So now I would like to touch on the practical difficulties we are facing on our property. So to help you understand, I've divided all the structures that we have, into 3 sets based on how we utilize them. So the set 1 is the storage and protection. Set 2 is gonna be outdoor living and entertainment, and set 3 is gonna be preservation of historical structure. So set 1, we have storage needs, like everyone, and then I like to point out that despite the total square footage of accessory buildings exceeding that 1,000 square feet / 1,500 listed in section 2702, our actual available storage space has reduced since we moved in due to drainage issues. The drainage issues have led to a substantial reduction in the usable storage space within the barn, making it impractical to store essential tools and equipment properly. So as of now, we have about 580 square feet of storage, which is shed B and then part of carport. And this is the reduction by 842 square feet since we moved in for storing small equipment and items. So we went from 1,422 to 580 because we can't use the barn. And then similarly, despite exceeding the square footage, we have reduced, the space for our vehicle protection. The collapse of our 3-car garage, construction of 2 vehicle carport has led to reduction of 202 feet since we moved in. So again, our protection, our storage for vehicles went from 750 to 548, despite the fact that we have increased the total square footage. So in summary, for the storage, we have less of storage and less of protection for vehicles. We have 1,128 storage to protect equipment and vehicles. So that was set 1 type of structure. Set 2 of structure has to do with our outdoor living and entertainment. So when we decided to buy this property, we decided to buy this property despite its state of deterioration. I'm not sure if any of you have been here long or remember like 24 years how that property looked, the house. We've done a lot of work. So at that time, we recognized the possibility of developing an outdoor living area that would enhance our experience. It took us 10 years since we moved in to build our beautiful outdoors living space, which consists of log cabin and a matching log gazebo. These structures are essentials to our enjoyment of the property and very much align with the township slogan, "Where living is vacation." We don't have to drive up north. I mean, we feel like we are already up north because of the structures. Very importantly, these structures provide very enjoyable atmosphere, we feel, not only to us, but also to our neighbors. As a matter of fact, we know that a few of our neighbors, and unfortunately they're not here, they told us that they build or purchase the house in the subdivision immediately adjacent to us because they like to look at the barn. They like the view of the barn, and then the other because they like the view of the log cabin and gazebo and the open space. So we feel that they provide, enjoyable atmosphere to our neighbors as well. So, however, we do recognize that their presence increases the square footage of the accessory buildings on our property, which conflicts with the local ordinance. And the third and the last set of structures which are on our property include structures which are not functional anymore, but these still provide historical significance and positive impact on the community. Our decision to keep these structures despite the usability contributes to they contribute to excess square footage, but at the same time, they are preserving the character of our old farmhouse property and the history of Orion Township. So the historical structures is 1,057 for the barn and 188 for the shed. That adds up to 1,245 square feet of structures that we can use. They're not usable. We just can't. So in conclusion, and in light of these practical difficulties, flooding, drainage issues, and preservation of historical structures, we kindly request the board to consider granting a variance for the square footage of our detached accessory buildings. We believe that our case is unique and that granting this variance will not be detrimental to the public health, safety, or welfare, or to other properties in the township. As a matter of fact, we feel that because some of our neighbors have expressed they liked, and that's the reason why they purchased or they build right next adjacent to us, they may suggest that our property has a positive influence on the surrounding area and may even be a selling point for some neighbors. So further strict compliance would deprive us of essential storage and enjoyment of our property. Our usable space has been reduced since we moved in. We rely on our outdoor structure for storage and leisure, and removing them will negatively impact our quality of life. And we believe that our neighborhood will not like if we remove, gazebo or log cabin or barn. I know they probably don't care about any of the sheds, but we know for the fact that they would like us to keep those structures in the carport. And then the accessory structures, matching log cabin, log gazebo, and log carport with 100-year-old farmhouse, barn, 100-year-old farmhouse, barn, and shed complement and preserve the historical elements of our property, contributing to the cultural heritage of the neighborhood and the Orion Township team where living is vacation. I also like to say, I did go around the neighbors and I asked them to sign petition, or not petition, to sign if they have any objections. Unfortunately, I forgot the list. I left it at home. So I had 3 neighbors that signed. They have no objection. Thank you for your time and consideration. That's the end.
While you're there, a couple things that I'm sure the board is just running over with questions here in a minute, but you talked about losing storage space but bringing in more buildings.
Yes.
I was kind of confused how you could bring in more buildings and lose space, and I was also curious how many of those buildings were brought in or built with the proper permits through the township so that nobody could have any problem with it, and if the overbuilding would have been caught at the permit stage, it probably wouldn't have gotten to this point.
So we've been dealing with Amish. So the first structure that we brought in, they've told us you do not need to have a permit because it's under 200 square feet. So the interior is 196 square feet. We believed them. We said, okay, these guys do this for a living. The gazebo, I know it says it's 400, the square footage is like 300 feet. Again, we did not ask for a permit on that. And then I know my husband called the township. I don't know what was his understanding. I don't know, because it's movable. And then the carport, we have not, again, we were under understanding that the Amish people would pull the permit. At the time when we found out they did not, we were in the middle of it, and we just went with that.
Well, the way the rules read is if the contractor you hire does the right thing, good for everybody. If they don't,
Right.
it becomes your problem.
Right, so I understand, so, and that's one of the reason why, why we're here, because the township asked, they made us to apply for the permit for the, 3-car.
Now, you spoke of how people feel about your property, and I'm going to remember that it is first thing in the spring, so everybody's property, all of ours, has had all winter to have things pile up someplace that we didn't know that they were. So taking that into consideration, I'll tell you what, somebody that saw your property for the very first time from the west on that road that runs across the top, when I went across there, I stopped, and the first words out of my mouth, and I was all alone, is what happened here? There were vehicles all over the place, a lot of them backed in places, and I know that's not what we're talking about tonight. But the overall look of the place was like, I won't even try to get descriptive, but I was shocked with it. And then when I see the total amount of variances that you're requesting, maybe some of my more senior colleagues here have, I personally, since I've been on this board, have never seen that type of variance numbers. So we've got a whole bunch of things that we have to deal with here. And it's hard to answer that, I know, it's hard. Board members, please.
I mean, so your question, the first question was, how did I reduce the storage, but
Yep, that's
I've
good one.
added. So I try to, and I know it's very confusing, and I try to do my best to explain. I have provided a table. So if you can maybe look at the table and follow the table shows what was on this.
Give me 1 second. Board members, did any of you follow this? Do you understand, so that I don't have to make this lady come through all these hoops again?
Oh, she don't have to do that.
No?
I got documentation right here.
Okay.
I can read.
Ms. Van Tassel?
Just so that you understand, you see that the property line along Indianwood and along Newman Road, as it was platted but never built, goes to the center of the road.
Yes.
And that's because the roads were there, the road commission comes along and they want to have jurisdiction over the road, which they do by State Law Act 51.
Yes.
And what the road commission did on those existing roads is get an easement so that, yes, her property line does run to the middle of Indianwood Road, and whether it was her or some previous owner, they signed an easement with the road commission, and the same thing is true over on Newman Road.
Correct.
And if you looked at a map of the township, and you're familiar with the library, north of the library, there's a Newman Road. And it runs both east and west of Joslin. And if you go out Newman to the west far enough, that it jogs a little to the north. And then it stops being. Then if you go out Indianwood, there's Newman Road that runs north of Indianwood and goes all the way up to Stanton. And you have to go that route in order to get to Paint Creek Country Club. Newman Road was platted south of Indianwood all the way down to the other Newman Road. Just some more history background so you understand what you're looking at. And the road commission has use of the road by grant of an easement. And there are many of them elsewhere, all along Indianwood Road, for example, along Walden Road, those property lines run to the middle of the road, so just another history lesson.
Ms. Van,
I have a question.
Then ask us,
The
I'm sorry.
petitioner, I have a question for you. So the barn and the shed that are 100 years old, they're not usable. What is their viability potential? I mean, are they going to withstand time, or are they deteriorating because of the moisture?
So when we first moved in, the barn was in a turbo shape, and then the same with the sheds. We put the, you know, we put the entire new roof on the barn, we did. So we put new roof on the barn, and we painted, we sealed the holes, we put some things, we painted nice. It's been 20 years, so it's literally, it's time to do something with it. So, it's holding, but because some of it is in the ground, there's a cinder blocks, and because now we have water coming north towards us, or the property is higher, so even if the water goes, you know, into the ground, it still will find its way underneath the ground to our barn, because the barn floor elevation is much lower, so all the water, even if it's gonna seep into the grass, it's gonna find its way to our barn. So it's holding. Well, I've been, you know, I mean, tell you the truth, we're only keeping it because it has historical, we have, right, no issue. We have really, like, if the township doesn't want us, we'll take it down. We have no, that's the only reason why we kept it. I also like to keep it because it kind of provides us with the buffer between us and the new house that they build, which is really looming over us. I mean, what they've done there, it's incredible. I don't know how that happened. So I have some of the pictures that show. So the only benefit that I think I will have is, you know, to some extent, it would provide a buffer. It's holding. It doesn't need the work. Do we want to put the money in? I don't know. Maybe it's better to get, you know, I don't know what the community is going to think about it, but we can do only what we can do. And then the shed, again, I think nobody notices, nobody knows about it. For us to remove it, it's no big deal. We can remove it.
Thank you.
So it's whatever community feels like doing at this point.
Mr. Walker?
How many cars live on that property, if I can say it that way? How many-
So I know what you're talking about. So my husband, you know, before he was mechanic, so we seem to have a little bit more vehicles, but the problem is we have no place to hide them. So unfortunately, that's what the neighbors have to deal. So I have my car, my husband has a car, we have one more car for towing our trailer. So there's 3 cars right now in the parking lot. Oh, and we have a pickup truck, which is for bringing, like, you know, maybe mulch or something. We hardly ever use it. So there's 4 cars right now. There used to live my son. When my son was there was a 5th car that he had it, and my brother. My father lived there too. So I do believe that, I do agree that there has been the times when it did not look, you know, very nice, but part of it, because we did not have the, you know, place. We don't have a place. We can't put in a barn. We don't have a, you know, as a matter of fact, I wish, you know, I've approached this zoning board a little bit differently, because we would like eventually build a 3-car garage, a real 3-car garage where we can hide, you know, those vehicles. And then we can remove the barn and remove it and just.
I'm not
So
sure.
there has been 5, yeah, there've been 5. And then on top of it, we have a backhoe. I mean, it's part of the suburban farm. I mean, that's why we moved here. But I think those cars are gone, and we have now 4.
You keep the cars in the barn at all?
No, we can't. I mean, they would not even fit in, so we can drive one in. Is it long enough? It's 20 feet, so it's long enough, so we can drive one in, but we would not be able to, like, maneuver to store more than one.
You put the cars in the carport?
We have one in the carport. There's a middle, it's for the storage, and then the other one,
Are there 2 carports, or did I?
2 carports.
Okay, but one is for storage?
No, so there's 2 carports plus the storage in between. So one there's a carport, car, a little bit of storage, car. So one section, so we have in one car, then we have a storage which all of it is wood, the log wood, right? Of fence wood. He says it's a fence wood. And then the other part, why we're not having a car store in there, is because he uses the equipment for the wood, right? So it's kind of protecting from the rain. So we only one car is stored right now, yes. The other car is behind the barn, and then two
Did I
cars
see
are
a
in
truck there
front.
too?
A pickup truck, blue pickup truck, yes.
You don't run any business out of there at all?
No. No business.
Thank you.
Question for Mr. Goodlow. I am totally ignorant, I do not know. Is there an ordinance in the township requiring vehicles on the premises to be plated?
All of the vehicles are plated.
With current plates? Because current plates cost a bunch of money.
Yeah, they
They do.
200, mine's, I just had a birthday, so, yeah.
Well, if they're currently plated.
They are plated.
Thank you.
All of them are plated. Yeah, and then, I don't know when was the last time you were at the property on the west side. So I know the west side is the worst looking part, I agree. But my husband, we try really, really hard to keep whatever he has going on by putting a nice, a wooden fence. So on all of the sides, we had a wooden fence so people would not see, the things that he had. He used to have a trucking business, so he had some, tires or some extra tools for his trucks, parts. But that's not, he's not running that business anymore. But it was never run from there, he just kind of had some parts there.
Well-
But again, what I want to say that we really tried, we put a nice wooden fence around the barn so people would not see what's inside there. And then if the neighbors did not like us, like our view, what I like to point out, on the south property, we did install the buffer, was installed by the township to protect us, because we complained about it, the subdivision being built there, and so part of a deal to maintain our privacy, the township made McLeish, or the development, to put up trees on the south and the west side. Well, the neighbors and the fence, we asked them to put a fence. One neighbor moved in, the first one, he took out the fence because he did not like the fence, which was put by the developer, because he wants to have a view from us, and he asked us, please let us have the view. I'm like, okay. Their kids and the subdivision kids, they bring and they play in our backyard, they play soccer.
Let
Yeah.
me slow you down for just a minute. Again, similar to the earlier case with the stable on the property line, we're only here tonight to look at the buildings that are there and whether we believe that there is ample reason to grant a variance to allow them to remain.
Good.
If you had neighbors here that would put up their hand, they could certainly come up and talk about this, and there may be some in the crowd here, I'm going to ask in a minute. But what the surrounding people think isn't something we have to deal with here tonight. We have a fairly simple situation. Now, I'm hearing, first of all, I'm going to tell you straight up, I personally, and I'm only one vote, I cannot support this level of variances, period. I just can't. The other board members, 3 of the other 4 may say, I don't know what you're thinking, I'm good for it. So I'm only one vote. But knowing that, now I hear you, well, if we need to take the barn down, we'll take the barn down. If they want us to take this down, we'll take this down. We can't play this on the fly. We can't, you have to sit down and decide what you are prepared to do so that when you come back here, if that's the way this goes, you may be successful and leave, I don't know. But if you have to come back, you need to know what you're asking for, and we need to know what you want. I mean, you're telling me, well, I'll take the barn down. Well, other than putting it in the motion, I don't really have any way to ensure that that actually happens. So some of this stuff needs to happen away from here. Board members, please, chime in.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Walker.
if I can, and I'm not going to tell you what to do, but it did strike my ear when you said you would be willing to take down the barn because it's there for historical view.
Yes.
And it's a nice-looking old barn. But if you took down the barn and the carport, you wouldn't even be here, I don't believe. There'd be nothing to talk about. You could
Where
just-
would I store the vehicles?
Oh, here, we're here to decide, as the chairman said, decide your two requests for these humongous variances. I've maybe seen bigger ones, but I don't remember them. It's a lot. The gentleman here was with the steps going downstairs, 0.3 feet, 3.5 feet. That's different. This
I'd like to
is,
point out, I'm sorry.
I mean, what we have here, we have ordinances. The zoning board has the power to circumvent or go around those ordinances if the situations require it. We're kind of telling you what the situations are to get that vote from us. And I'm sensing, kind of like the chairman does, the votes aren't here.
So again, let me try to explain it, maybe. So I have 1,000,
Ma'am,
yes,
can I ask you a favor? You don't have, you can tell me no. Can you, first of all, do we have anybody, show of hands, do we have anybody prepared to come up and speak to this? Okay, we have some people that want to come up. Would it be okay if you sat down, organized your thoughts while these people spoke, and then came back? Normally, one bite's all you get, but we'll make an exception for you. So if we have somebody that'd like to come up, introduce yourself, and away you go.
Good evening. My name is Doug Broquet. I own the property to the west of their property. I drive down that road every day. I see a little bit of clutter there. You might be used to more structured, the way people park cars. The way their property's set up, there's really no structured way to park their cars. So they park their cars as they need them. And I have no objection to that. I don't know if you say I'm used to it or whatever, but it's not objectionable to me, the way they have their cars, which at times when they have company and they have a lot of people, there's more cars there than just their own. They moved in there 24 years ago. It was a rough piece of property. The house was rough. The property was rough. They've done an excellent job of trying to maintain and try to improve and trying to live there and make it as enjoyable for themselves and for the neighborhood as they could afford. They're good people. They're hardworking people. They're not city slickers. They're not people that have the structure maybe that you're used to. But I have no objection to their property. I have no objection to their buildings. I know this is a unique piece of property. You probably won't see a place like that anywhere that I can think of. And I've lived here 55 years on that west piece of property. Their property goes down low, and there's some drainage from the new subdivision, which has hindered their buildings, which have deteriorated their buildings prematurely. And as hard as they work on their buildings, as hard as they try to maintain what they have, sometimes it's a losing battle. Again, I have no objection to what they're asking for. Again, they're hardworking people. They're not city folks necessarily, but we live out in the country to a degree. And I know it's not what you're used to, and maybe the rest of you folks, it's not the neighborhood you live in, but it's the neighborhood we live in. And I have no objection to what they've done and what they propose. They might be a little stretched out. They might be a little more square feet than is allowed. But I understand it might be against the ordinance, but from a standpoint of a neighbor that looks at it every day, I have no objection. Thank you.
Thank you, well said.
Out there since 1952. So I'm old, and I've been there for a long time. I lived in a house right across the street from the subdivision. I have no objection to what they've done with their home. They've worked on that barn, the old one that they want to save. And the reason why they can't save it, I would like to come up and show you something. Can I do
Please.
that?
Sure.
Okay.
Okay.
And I lived there for 30-some years.
Mhm.
When we were there, this truck, this dozer, pushed all that dirt. You see that hill?
Yep.
Okay, that hill is all around your property where the water goes. This is that hill right now. It's underneath here. They dug it that deep, probably 10 feet down. Where it here is probably 20 feet up. So where does the water go? That's the
Can you show
driveway.
your picture more like this?
I'm sorry.
That's okay. We saw the pictures. I saw that one. You saw that one.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah,
I saw it, yeah.
yeah, we saw that when you were holding it this way. Now you're holding it that way when you talk to him. If you could just make him square them up.
Well, you know what, when we were in our house and they were doing this, our dishes and our cabinets
Yeah,
rattled. It
I understand,
It was
yep.
just terrible for them to do that.
okay. Okay, and your other pictures now, the ones on the other hand.
Okay, this is going into their driveway. And this is where.
No.
See the fence there?
Yes?
That was supposed to be an enclosed golf course, and they took it out because they couldn't get their car in and out of their garage, so they had to make the wall over more into their driveway. Now, maybe they can get their car in and out, but in the meantime, the water is running in there.
Okay, and this is the house to the south?
It's by their driveway going into their
Okay.
yard. So it's to the south of their
Yes.
Inwood.
Yes.
It's just right across from where we live.
Okay,
Okay? And then here's the houses that are there, that are buried in that hole where I showed you that big truck, that big, whatever you call it, thing that moves the dirt.
excavator.
That's how far down there are. If they would put them on top of that hill, you'd see
Yeah.
the whole thing. But that's not what it is.
Okay, did, Don, did you see the pictures okay?
See how it was? It was like that for years and years and years, not anymore. And they came and they took that big truck, whatever kind you call that, which I don't know, and they moved all that dirt that way.
Oh.
So then they dug it down to below where these houses are sitting in holes. And that's where that hill is. So, with them working on that barn for how many years, because this they started doing, so we were still in that house.
Are you done with your pictures? Why don't you go back to the mic, just so that the TV
Okay.
people can pick you up?
Okay. So actually, they were, did I leave? I'm sorry.
No, that's all right, I didn't see it, it's behind my screen, I guess.
So I'm not opposed to them living there. I understand why their barn was kept very well when they first moved in, because the water wasn't going in there so much. So then when they could store stuff in that barn, they could put stuff away. But when all this water come in, which my son would go over there and help try and keep it running in a different direction, which they couldn't. So now the water is running there, and now they have the problem, so they have to pull everything away from where it was low, and they have to put it up higher towards the house, and that's where their storage is short of. If that water wouldn't have come in there because of this, they could store stuff in that barn, and it would be a beautiful place. I love that barn. I love Tiffin's barn on Indianwood. I think that barn is beautiful, and of course, the golf course has got that now too, I believe. You know which one I'm talking about on Indianwood?
I don't myself, no.
It belongs to the people that bought the golf course that Ms. Van Tassel was talking about. They have a golf course down on Indianwood and
Yeah.
Egg Creek.
Hmm?
Egg Creek.
Yeah. So I think they're going to do something with that barn. But anyway, I have no objections. I'm happy with the people. I love them. They're very kind and generous. They help everybody that they can. They fix everything while they can. They've got somebody over there right now that is diminishing the whole fence that the snow plowed and knocked the whole fence down. He can't do it anymore, so he had to hire someone to do it. I wouldn't have hired him, but that's just me. And he's got a bunch of boards and a truck backed up there, and it looks like a big mess, but he had to take down that whole fence when the snow was plowed and knocked it over. And on top of that, they come down our street, Newman, I shouldn't even talk about it, but they come down our street, Newman, twice in the summer, every month, sometimes 3 times, and they have to plow it, and they put chlorine down, and in the winter, we don't see them at all.
Okay, I fear we're straying off topic.
Yep, I am.
I'm going to need to time you out now.
I'm out.
Thank you for your input.
Good to see you. Thank you.
Do we have anyone else that'd like to come up?
Hi, I'm Chris Broquet. I live at 110. I live in the house she used to live in. And so I didn't see that view because I didn't live there yet. I just wanted to reiterate, yeah, if you've seen their property recently, you've hit a very bad time. Their beautiful, beautiful cedar fence was destroyed by the plow truck. They had a nice gate. It was just, you give directions, you talk about the fence, and everybody's like, oh gosh, how that beautiful that is. So whatever they're working on, I mean, you don't not see from Indianwood and Newman, and you have to go down into the valley, so to speak. And if it weren't for acts of God or acts of subdivision, we wouldn't be here, because they'd have a barn to park in and put their, hobbies in. They would have a beautiful 3-car garage. They might have a little shed, or maybe they'd do the gazebo for their enjoyment. But all these other structures were to mitigate the damage since about 2000 that the subdivision brought in. And I know there's a little wall between the neighbor and their house, like a little retaining wall, and I remember those rocks tumbling down, in the driveway kind of sinking a little bit, and that all impacts their property. So I know it looks like they've got a lot of things, but some of these were Band-Aids over the years because they're losing the structure of the barn, and they're losing the structure of a garage because it doesn't exist. Now, you may think, well, why don't they just put up a 3-car garage? But not everybody has the financial resources to immediately do that. That's been years since the garage has been down, so they did what they could to protect their vehicles and, and things like that. So, and I do understand leaving historic barns up because, I mean, if we bring, if all the ordinances say that you have to come down because of where they are on the property line, there's really not going to be any left. So I just want to reiterate, they're great neighbors. I know the zoning doesn't care about, they could be rotten people, the zoning doesn't care about that. But I just want to say, if you had come when the fence was up and beautiful and they didn't have, guests over, it would look like, okay, hey, there's 2 cars down there. And it would look like a different situation. So I just want to reiterate, I don't have any problem with them. I don't know any neighbor has any problem with it. Do they need to revisit a permit on a structure? I mean, hopefully they're able to build their 3-car garage and not have the carport. It just takes time. And do they need to address a zoning with maybe a movable gazebo? Maybe they need to go back and do that. But overall, the structures don't take up a big part of the property when you look at it. So just another vote in favor of, they're willing to take a shed down, but other than that, I would either grant them it or say revisit once you figure out the shed or something like that. But I'm in favor of it, and none of their buildings are a nuisance. Thank you.
Thank you. It's fantastic.
I've got a question. In the petition, it talks about, and there's a photo here that shows kids running around and playing in the area around the gazebo. I was like, whose kids are those? Just, you got to come up to the microphone so we can hear, because somebody records all this good stuff.
Oh, so the pictures, in the picture, those kids are the neighbors that took out the fence because they like the view, and then they brought some other kids from the neighborhood, so.
Okay.
Yes.
Another quick question. The property that is to your south and east that's been developed, it created problems, is that the old Frank Kopacek farm? I know the subdivision, my question is the subdivision built on Frank Kopacek's old farm? Okay, thank you.
I believe it's an old Indian wood golf course. Because before the development, we would get golf balls on our backyard.
Okay.
So it was a golf course, and yes.
All right, you kindly allowed me to interrupt you, and you went back and regained your flow. You said you were wanting to finish your presentation. Do you have anything additional?
The only thing I can say is, it sounds like Mr. Durham couldn't understand or couldn't see how we reduce our storage space and vehicle protection space, but still we increase the square footage. So I'm not sure if I have to, I'm not sure if I need to spend more time explaining
Well,
that.
that's one reason that I'm not up here alone. I've got 4 other learned folk right here next to me that can help me get this.
So the total square footage of accessory structure which are functional has decreased since, we purchased the building, the property, by a total of 420 square feet, which I think it's more. This is incorrect, probably. But
That isn't really germane to we're losing focus a little bit. What we're about here, what we have to decide is the numbers here in front of us. If that's something that the board is able to move forward with or refuse to move forward with.
so at the minimum, I would like the board to give us a variance for the square footage that was present at the time when we purchased the,
Do you know that number?
it's 2,360.
Above the allowed?
That's a grand total. I don't know what's the allowed. I would appreciate if you could maybe give me half of what we've added to, so 400 and plus 400. I'm adding only 825 square feet. And in my mind, right now, we have a garage 548 square feet, and we have storage, storage. I can't imagine that there are other people that live on a suburban farm that have only that much of a storage. We're talking 1,128 square feet of storage, which is for the protection of the mowing. That's only 1,128. And then And then we have outdoor living space, which is 714, which is the gazebo, and then, so I can't imagine, and it's a lot. Like, I don't know how people can live with only 1,000 square feet of accessory buildings, like, in a suburban farm. I'm not a subdivision. So it's just like in my mind, it's just,
All right, I'm going to have to call a temporary timeout. I've got to get with the board members here. We have to move forward. We're stuck in neutral. Mr. Flood,
I just got some comments.
please.
Everyone in this township who is zoned suburban farms falls under the same criteria as anyone else. All our zoning, no matter what your residential zoning is. We all abide by that ordinance. When we start checking these numbers, I'm going by the numbers that our planning and zoning department has given us. Those are the factual numbers, and that's all bears out in the public notice of what they're requesting. When you start jumping these, we've had this happen before to us. When you start jumping these numbers up, to me, I can't make a good decision on this. That's why a lot of times I'll say to the applicant, go back to the planning and zoning department, work this out with the professionals in the zoning department, then you can come back. If you're gonna reduce a lot like that, because I can't, because you're talking reducing that, you're talking reducing the square footage on this, square footage on that, and I'm not a mathematician up here to do that. I'm here to exactly take care of what's in front of me right now. And to address the neighbors, these are fine people. We're not questioning that. I have great neighbors too. But every one of us that lives here in the township, we have to abide by the rules too. What my concern is, and I hope the applicant would listen to what I'm saying, is get back with the planning and zoning department if you can reduce this down. Because I gotta agree with my two fellow members up here. When I go through the numbers, you have suburban farms, you have a 1.61 acre parcel. You've got 70,000 square feet.
yes.
That's what they're going by. How much are you putting in this square footage? You do not exceed the lot coverage, and that's in their favor, that's good. However, you are 2 times greater than the maximum allowable floor space for detached structures, and you're 2.5 times greater than the maximum floor for, area. I have never granted a variance in this township that great. So what I'm hoping the applicant can do, it's up to the applicant. If they want to reduce this down, get back with the planning and zoning department, I'd be more than happy to look at it again, but I'm not doing the math on this.
See, that was kind of what I was referring to earlier when I said some of this stuff needs to happen away from here. You can agree to postpone if that's what you choose to do, and go back and make a good faith effort to sit down and come up with a number with, as Mr. Flood just said, the planning and zoning people, who I'm sure you know on site by now, and come back with a number that you feel may be a little bit better received up here. Because I don't know, there's a couple of them that haven't spoke up, but taking the temperature of the room, it's a bit chilly. And that might be something, if I was standing at your mic, that I would want to take into consideration.
Okay.
Agreeing to postpone and reduce is better in my mind than a hard no, because then you're right back where you were and you're running out of options.
I appreciate it.
Again, that is not up to me to say, that is your decision. You're the one that came to us. But I'm not seeing a good, clear path around it. And I don't know if we have the authority to ask for it, but I would certainly want to look into the history of permits or no permits for those buildings too.
Yes.
Everything in my mind should be on the table. So that when you're done with us, the township, you don't have to worry about anybody else stopping by. Nobody else is going to ask you what's going on, come on down and talk about it.
Right.
And that's where you want to be.
Right.
And it sounds like that's where your neighbors would like you to be.
Yes.
Thank you. Or, Ms. Daskis.
Mr.
Go ahead.
Newcastle was first. Okay. Just to add to that, it is a large variance that you're requesting. And I would personally have difficulty granting a variance for buildings that are not viable, that are not usable. Because what tends to happen to those buildings when they're not used is they deteriorate even more quickly. So by granting a variance for those, that carries with the property forever. So that means if those are gone, if someone tears those down, if we approve the variance, someone could put something else up, am I correct? So
Yes,
I'm having difficulty with approving a variance that includes buildings, structures that are unusable. I love historic buildings, I do, but if they deteriorate, they're no longer even of historic significance.
Right.
Thank you.
Ms. Van Tassel.
I've got a question that may need to be directed to the attorney. It has always been my understanding and experience when we talk about lot coverage, and that's what I see these two variances being, is lot coverage. You're only talking about the ground floor. And I see in here, the barn has a loft of 450 feet. The loft area doesn't have any impact on ground coverage. Now, maybe the law has changed and I'm not up to date with stuff, but I'd like to get an attorney's opinion on just what is covered here on lot coverage. Is it just stuff that's on the ground? What is, I can't read that.
Well, the planning and zoning department's got that all worked out on their sheet for the total lot coverage.
Yeah, I see that. My question is, did they include stuff that shouldn't be included? I don't know.
They're the experts, not me.
Well-
And you say you got the attorney, but I understand. All I can go, like you said, all we can do is go what's before us.
And I asked to have a drawing from the assessing department, and sometimes their numbers don't agree with what's presented here. I'd just like to, I think this is one we need to take a step back from and get some more information. And because I know I look at page 1 of what was it, you know, I've got a barn that's 20 by 30 and it comes to 607 square feet. Well, 20 by 30 is 600 every day of the week. Well, then you look somewhere else and you see, oh, well, that barn is 20.10 and 30.20. So maybe that accounts for the extra 7 feet. So I think I'd ask the petitioner, has been suggested, you might want to request that this be set over until you can take another look at what's what, and we can get clarification on just what's included. What the assessor includes as square footage for assessing purposes includes second floors and things like that. I'm not sure that it applies for lot coverage.
So when you talk about lot coverage, that's the ground floor of the structure. When you talk about the square footage of the structure, that does include loft areas or second floors. So that's how it's calculated. Lot coverage is not requested in this variance because they're, you know, they have a big lot and 70,000, and they gotta be over a certain percentage for that. So you don't, you know, when you talk about lot coverage, it is about impervious surface typically. And usually, you know, we do go by the assessing numbers, but when the petitioner requests bigger numbers, then we would take their numbers. So I don't know what intention that was, but when the petitioner does request for a larger number, we're going to put that number on our request.
So, just for clarification, I had different numbers and Well. like the
And
lady
with due
that I
respect
worked
to
with.
everyone that has spoken,
Yeah.
you're not within a few feet. It's not like 30 feet is going to cross the goal line for you. You're going to have to make some significant changes if that's what you decide to do. I can't tell you what to do. I would love to tell you what to do. It'd take about 30 seconds. But you need to read the room, get an idea whether you have a chance to pass tonight or not. Because we've already, more than one member has spoken to the idea that we are not willing to play this on the fly and erase this number and pencil another number in. It's going to have to happen at zoning and planning, where this all started for you.
Okay.
So if you want to back away with a postponement and get away relatively clean until you can figure this out, you can do that. If you want to forge ahead, you can do that.
Yeah, I'd like to talk with, I'd like to postpone it if possible.
So you're asking us to postpone this until, what was our date certain?
May 22nd.
Till the May 22nd meeting?
Mr. Chairman, I'm prepared to make a motion.
Let me, 1 second. Is that what you're asking us to do?
Yes, please.
Thank you. Mr. Flood?
That's what I understood too.
Okay.
Let me get this. In the matter of AB 2023-06, Wyletta?
Yes,
Mylan?
yes.
2209 Inwood Road, City Well number 0904-300-002, and her date stamped was on March 10th, 2023. At the petitioner's request, be postponed until May 22nd, 2023, so that the applicant can get back with the Planning and Zoning Department to make any further adjustments to her application.
I will support if we can add the very short sentence at the applicant's request.
I think I said that
Did you?
at the beginning, I
I
believe.
thought you did. Okay, I'm sorry.
But
I'll support it
But I'll
anyway.
amend it anyway.
I'll support anyway. Further discussion by the board. I have a motion by Mr. Flood, supported by myself. Please call the roll.
Dane Januskas, yes. Joanne Van Tassel.
Yes,
Don Walker.
Yes.
Mike Flood.
Yes.
Dan Durham.
Yes. You are postponed until May 22nd. Make contact with zoning and planning. They will give you the path forward.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, if I could say something.
Mr. Flood.
And somehow we can get planning and zoning or our attorney to address Ms. Van Tassel's concerns on that lot coverage and the maximum floor areas.
well,
Get that resolved.
I'm going to go check the definitions in the zoning ordinance on floor area,
Okay.
I didn't put that in the motion, but
you know.
Next up, AB 2023-07, Stadium Ridge Apartments, 101 Stadium Drive, Sidwell 09-14-400-025. Petitioner is seeking two variances from zoning ordinance 78, zoned RM, Article 7, Section 7.04, E1A. Number one, a 12.83-foot front yard setback variance from the required 100 feet for Building 13 to be 87.17 feet from Stadium Drive. Number two is a 12.83-foot front yard setback variance from the required 100 feet for Building 14 to be 87.17 feet from Stadium Drive. Petitioner or spokesperson, come on up. Okay. Identify yourself, please, and
Good evening. My name is Mario Izzy. I'm with MJC Companies. We're the owner of the property. We're the developer and the builder. We're located at 46600 Romeo Plank in Macomb Township.
I understand this is a reversal of a previous rezone.
Yes, sir.
Can you explain that
I
briefly?
would love to, sir. And I realize the time, so I'll try to be brief.
Oh, that's okay.
We're here for another 5 minutes. Take your time.
Thank you, Mr. Walker. Appreciate it. So we currently have a site plan that is technically approved under a conditional rezoning, and that allows us to build 53 single-family lots, single-family homes, and we have approximately 12,000 square feet of commercial that's approved, site plan approved, engineered, permitted. We started construction on the site COVID hit, all kinds of excuses and bad things have happened that you've heard. We've tried to move forward with the commercial part of the project. We had one potential tenant, but we struck out on the rest of the square footage. And like I said to the Planning Commission before, I'd rather us fail on paper than us build some spec buildings and they sit empty. I think maybe you have a little bit of that already. And we have another property in the township that we struggle with the commercial tenants. So we took a step back. The underlying zoning is RM1. We have a product that we build in 3 counties, a 12-plex product that's very successful. We sell the product. We also rent it. We're proposing to rent these units out. We think it'd be a very successful product for us next to the school property. This property is unique, which is why we're before you, trying to demonstrate the practical difficulty that we have, the medium density that's placed on the property. In order to meet the spirit and intent of the density and the zoning ordinance and the master plan, because of the unique shape of the corner parcel right at Stadium and Lapeer, we're unable to build this building without asking for some relief. And I understand that this body probably is unsympathetic to whatever recommendation we have from the Planning Commission. But we do have a recommendation from the Planning Commission for a site plan approval. But that means really nothing here in this room today. I understand that, and I'm not trying to play that card. We're trying to move forward with a development that we think will be successful. We think that this variance request is reasonable. I do believe that we have a practical difficulty here with the shape of the property, the size of the property. I admit there is no topographical issues in order to overcome to build this building without getting the variance. But I do believe in order to meet the spirit and intent of the zoning, the 100-foot setback is unusual. And I think it's a little bit harsh given the size and shape of the property that we're dealing with and the product that we're trying to build that is continuous throughout the parcel. One question you may ask us is, why don't you just build a different building? In order to keep the product continuous throughout the project, and we have a presence right on Lapeer Road and Stadium Drive, we would like the opportunity to build the same product and demonstrate that it'll be a showpiece so that we can build that throughout the rest of the development. So that's why we want to have this continuity of the product throughout the parcel.
And Mr. Chair, Walker, at the Planning Commission, the petitioner has stated exactly what we decided. We went back and forth a few times, and we worked out everything except these 2 variances. And it was sent to this board conditionally that if in fact this board sees fit to grant those variances, the entire project can then go forward.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Please.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. If I can just add a couple more things, and just for consideration. One thing we did with the site plan is we added 11 feet to the setback of the one building. I think it's building number 13 off of Lapeer Road. So as for consideration, we're asking for the relief off of Stadium Drive, but we've also added 11 foot to the setback of that building off of Lapeer Road. Just something to consider. Also, we added a berm for landscaping. We've added substantial landscaping both on Stadium Drive and Lapeer to help soften that setback. I don't believe that you'll realize, or I don't believe that the average person onlooker under this project would realize a 12-foot variance off of Stadium Drive. But that's just my opinion. That's for you to consider. Thank you.
You go way back in time. You said you're going to rent these. Are they residential apartment type rentals?
Yes, sir.
Who's going to own them?
We will own them.
Okay.
Yes, sir. We self-manage several of our residential projects in 3 different counties. We also develop out of state as well. But to be more specific, some projects we do hire management companies. This particular project we would self-manage.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Board members. Ms. Van Tassel.
Yeah, in here you said that what you're building on Stadium is gonna be like what you're building on the large parcel. And so I asked the planning department to contact you and see, give me an elevation, a frontage elevation of your Stadium Drive, right, and give me one in your larger parcel. I got the front elevation, and I got a side elevation. I could care less about the side elevation. I want to see, what are you building on the large parcel? Does it really duplicate what you're showing here? I don't have that information.
I believe, may I answer, Mr. Chairman?
Please, absolutely.
That was submitted with the documents to the Planning Commission. I don't understand why it maybe didn't show up at the ZBA, or nobody requested from us to submit that tonight, but we'd be happy to supply that. I do have an elevation, which is a custom specialized elevation for the Lapeer Row frontage, because if you look on the site plan, we're proposing a 12-unit full building, and then we're building what we call a half a 12. It's a sixplex. So we do have an elevation with, that will front Lapeer Road with more masonry than we would normally build. And we added some windows there as well, and we put a hip roof to soften that facade.
Okay, I also asked for information on the setback of the buildings on Beacon Way, which are on the south side of Stadium Drive. I didn't get that information either. I mean, so, you know, to me, you got a stronger case if these buildings on Beacon Way are less than 100 feet off of Stadium Drive. But I don't have that information.
I don't want to represent without being 100% sure that those are less than 100 feet. They appear less than 100 feet from the aerial, but I'm not going to say that I measured those. The school, certainly the school property, those buildings are substantially less than 100 feet, but
I know
understand
that.
the school is a different animal, and Mr. Walker can attest to the conversations that we've had with some of the, we think.
Okay. I do know
hardships.
that some realtors have lasers that will measure distances. It would seem to me to be a simple thing to take a laser measure, stand in the stadium and shoot towards the building, and yeah, it's 90 feet or it's 87 or whatever. If I had one of those things, I would have done it myself, but I don't.
Mr. Flood, I'm sorry.
You heard earlier we had an applicant that wanted 90% lot
Variance.
variance.
Yes, sir, I do recall.
I'm looking at this, I don't, everyone's based on their own, your own thing here. We can't really compare it.
Yes, sir.
I'm trying to compare apples to apples and orange to oranges here. When I look at 100 feet, and you're asking for 12.83 feet, that's 12.83%.
Yes, sir.
We're not talking 90. I have no problem with the 12%.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Chairman, if I could just,
Please.
just to reiterate,
No.
we're very sympathetic to that. We try not to plan these projects out so that we have to come to you for variances. This project could have went a couple different ways. We could have amended the conditional rezone. We thought this was the simplest way, the simplest path to get to an approved site plan, so that we didn't have to get into a lot of give and take with the Planning Commission. And I started my career here in Orion Township 30 years ago, development. I don't know that I know much more than I did back then, but I do enjoy coming to Orion Township. I think you're more than fair. We enjoyed sitting through how you treat the other petitioners tonight. You're very fair. We just thought that this would be the simplest way to try to get to an approved site plan and try to get this property developed to go forward, asking for these two variances. Whether or not you agree with us to the degree of the hardship, we still believe that there's a hardship in trying to meet the overall spirit of the ordinance. So far, this has been a great experience, and regardless of how you vote tonight, we appreciate your time. Thank you.
Can I make a comment to this?
Yes, sir.
Don't ever say hardship. It's practical difficulty.
Practical difficulty, yes, sir. Thank you.
That's what they tell us all the time.
Thank you.
It occurs to me, looking at the information and hearing your presentation, that you have in fact tried to minimize the request, and the property will get developed and it will get used, and I'm happy to hear that your company will be owning it, because I come from another municipality where sometimes there were gypsy owners, and you could tell when one left and another one came because the property deteriorated. But I don't get any sense of that here, and I think you've checked the boxes, at least in my mind.
Thank you, sir.
Sure.
Mr. Ness.
Goodlow had something.
Ms. Goodlow?
Joan, were you looking for the front and the rear elevation?
Looking at this is what I was provided. It says, building elevations, it's front/rear elevation, so front and rear is gonna,
Yeah.
If you got it, bring it right to the lady there.
This is the front elevation that you see from Stadium Drive? Yes, ma'am.
that's what I see.
Yeah.
Now show me what's on the larger parcel. You got an elevation on the larger parcel.
So this is the same building that will be built on the balance of the property. I just wanted to point out that because we have a half a building off of Lapeer Road, this is the elevation that we would build off of Lapeer Road. We've added windows, we've added more masonry.
That's a side elevation.
This is the side elevation, so that's, that building cut right in half.
Yeah, I understand that. Now show me a front/rear elevation of something on the large parcel.
Same, it's the same building. There's the front, there's the side. You know what, I've got a black and white copy in my packet.
Okay.
Let me grab that.
Okay, thank you.
That's probably where the confusion is. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. The front elevation and the rear elevation on these buildings are precisely the same. So that's maybe where the confusion is. And it is the same building. That's what we, on the facade, on this drawing, we call it a front and rear elevation. So it is the same.
So that's what's gonna be built on the big parcel.
Yes, ma'am. And I want to say we have over 154 units in total. I don't recall how many buildings. So here's the
Okay.
front parcel where we're asking
Yep.
for the variance. This is the balance of the property where we're building 12 buildings.
Is that your site plan, or a
This is-
part of it?
This is probably an earlier version. It doesn't have all of the current revisions.
You only have one drawing of elevations then, and just tell the planning commission to apply this everywhere?
Yes, that's, like I said, this is a building that we're very successful with. We have a rental project in Commerce Township with the same 12-plex building. Sure, we've got actual photos, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
You set with this? This was the half of the building.
I understand.
Okay.
Thank you.
Minutes are up. 3 minutes are up.
That's my mistake. I misunderstood. I apologize.
Just went off. I'm certain we don't, but do we have any public that came to speak to this tonight? Okay, seeing none, we can continue. Board members have nothing additional, we can entertain a motion anytime. Ms. Fantasil, are you sufficiently happy to move forward, or you still have some questions?
I have the photographs if Ms. Fantasil would like to see.
You got information, bring it. Absolutely, please.
Sometimes we change
Yes.
the brick, it depends on the masonry that's available, but it's generally an earth tone color
Yep.
palette.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I watched the planning commission meeting.
Thank you.
Yeah, well, I watch those faithfully.
I don't get cable, I've never seen one of them.
Like this is coming back to the
I look
board.
good at those meetings, too. I look good at those
Do you?
meetings, too. Yeah.
Maybe I need to get cable. The board is out of questions. We need to move forward, please, with a motion.
Okay. I would move in the matter of ZBA case AB 2023-07, Stadium Ridge Apartments, 101 Stadium Drive, Sidwell number 0914 400 025. I would move that the petitioner's request for two variances from zoning ordinance number 78, parcel zoned RM, Article 7, Section 7.04, paragraphs E1A, a 12.83 feet front yard setback variance from the required 100-foot setback for building 13 to be 87.17 feet from Stadium Drive, and a 12.83-foot front yard setback variance from required 100-foot for building 14 to be 83.17 feet from Stadium Drive, be granted for plans date stamp March 20th, 2023. Because the petitioner did demonstrate that the following standards for variance have been met in this case, that they are set forth, which show that in the case, the petitioner does show the following practical difficulty due to unique characteristics of the property and not related to general conditions of the area. The property is somewhat shallow, and for the project to be built using the basic design of the property, it is necessary for variances from the 100-foot required setback to be made so that the product remains harmonious and contemporary with what will be built on the larger parcel adjacent to this parcel. The existing, the following are exceptional or extraordinary systems or conditions applicable to the property which are not generally applied to other properties in the same general. It's the fact that the parcel in question is a rather shallow parcel compared to others in the general neighborhood. The variance is necessary for the preservation and enjoyment of substantial property rights possessed by other properties in the same zone or vicinity based on the fact that the other parcels in this vicinity on either side, north or south of Stadium Drive, have a greater depth and have more room to provide for setbacks of this shallowness of this lot, and the product to be built require the setbacks for the enjoyment of substantial property rights. The permitting of the variance or modification will not be material detrimental to the public welfare or material injurious to the property or the improvements in such zone or district, because the buildings are limited in size and the amount of traffic will probably be less than what is enjoyed by the property owners and the buildings, the occupants of the buildings along Beacon Way to the south, or to those, whether employed there or dropping students off at Stadium Drive, will have much more traffic. Further, based on the following findings of fact, the granting of the variance would not impair the adequate supply of light and air to the adjacent properties due to the property sits below the property to the north, which is the King of Kings Lutheran Church. Also, the buildings are set a further distance back from Lapeer Road, M24. It will not unreasonably increase congestion to the public streets due to the limited size of the parcel and the buildings to be built. It will not increase the danger of fire or danger of the public safety based on the comments of the fire marshal of the Orion Township Fire Department. And it will not unreasonably diminish or impair established property values within the surrounding areas due to the limited size of these buildings. And it is something that fits in with the character of the neighborhood and with this property as is zoned.
Mr. Chair, I will second the motion. If the motion maker will put the following condition, that this is conditioned upon the Board of Trustees reverting the property back to multiple family RM1.
Thank you, I accept. I consider that as a friendly amendment and would include it in the wording of the motion.
A very friendly amendment.
Yes.
Is that what you were going to say?
Same thing, yes.
Okay, we have a motion by Ms. Van Tassel and a second by Mr. Walker. Do we have any additional comment? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Mike Flood?
Yes.
Don Walker?
Yes.
Joanne Van Tassel?
Yes.
Diane Denaskus, yes. Dan Durham?
Yes, passed unanimously. One thing
Thank you.
you learned tonight, don't ever be last on the agenda.
We enjoy it. Thank you.
Thank
For
you.
your time.
Thanks
And we
for
appreciate
coming
your
in.
support. Thank you so much.
Thanks for your patience.
No problem.
Next, we have public comment. Our gentleman, no? Okay. Are you folks here for public comment? No. No? Okay, then we'll pass. Get the complete experience.
Since you stayed this late, it's $4 a piece for tickets. All right.
All right, we got no public comment, communications. Any, Mr. Flood?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to cancel the May 8th, 2023 Zoning Board of Appeals meeting due to a lack of agenda items.
Thank you. I'll support. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Against? None. Thank you. It is canceled. Committee reports. Mr. Walker, any library business or anything going
We
on?
have a big meeting tomorrow night, the Friends of the Library Annual Meeting. Don't miss it. We may have snacks, we may not. But the election of officers reports on how well well, I'm going to give you guys a pitch while you're sitting here. The Friends of the Library are the fundraising arm for the library. By default, I become the president of the Friends. Our mission is only to raise money for the library, so for their programs, for the kids' programs, and all that stuff. The annual meeting is at 6:30 tomorrow at the library. Joanne has attended these meetings, I know you have.
Say what?
Friends of the Library.
Or maybe not. And you're all, they're open to the public, there'll be, officers will be elected. Unfortunately, I don't think anybody's running against me, so I may be stuck for that job for another year. And we're always looking for volunteers, people to help out with the book sales, just to show up at the library, because libraries are good. I'm done.
Thank you.
I'm a member of the Friends
Friends,
of the
you are,
Library.
oh, I'm sorry, you are, I forgot about that.
My donation will be in the mail in May.
Both dollars?
Now, see, if you'd really been, you'd be like me, a charter member, a founding member of Friends of the Library.
You don't have to
I
pay
mean-
dues anymore, huh?
I mean, it's down to the point where I think my share, I've been a member for so long, of what I paid, I'm probably down to maybe $5 is, or less.
I'm thinking, I'm a nickel a year with
Okay.
my investment cost me.
Any, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead, oh, I'm done.
Any other member comments?
Want to go home?
No comment.
Seeing none, motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Support, all in favor?
Aye.
Oppose, we're done, thank you.